So, we talk about our first empire that precedes 1200 by a lot. It's the old Roman Empire. It's the Eastern Roman Empire. They didn't call themselves this, but what do we call them? Byzantine Empire. All right, and they're roughly 330 when they split in Rome to the east side to 1453 when they're overcome by the Ottoman Turks, which we'll talk about later. So, Byzantines, they're Roman?
No.
What are they?
Greek.
Mostly Greek, right? But they call themselves Romans despite not being Latin people. But they do use a lot of Roman systems, and Greek culture and Roman culture mix it together. So, got the Byzantine Empire. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with for quite a while. We have our famous emperor who reconquered the West after it fell to Germanic invaders. What was his name? Justinian, yeah. He did a few things. And his wife, Theodora. She's actually quite famous because there was one point where there was a rebellion in Constantinople, which was the next question I was going to ask, what's the capital, but there you go. In Constantinople, and Justinian was like going to bail. And she's like, I'm the empress, or you're the emperor, or something like that, and I'm not going anywhere. And so he's like, okay. And so they stayed, and their elite guards actually beat the rebellion, and they got to stay there. Had they left, they probably would have lost, and it would have been a big issue, but they won. So, yay her. If they had, of course, lost and she died, then it would not have been yay her, but they did, so yay her. All right, capital, Constantinople. They do, like I said, Rome is sacked and conquered by, a mix of the Visigoths and later the Lombards, all kinds of Germanic invaders. You don't need to know those details. Just know the West fell. They temporarily reconquered it for a century or so, but, it's really hard to hold on to that at this point. So they lose it again, and for quite a while, they sit there pretty content with their holdings in the Eastern Mediterranean, fighting their arch rivals to the east.
Persia.
Yeah, this Parthian and then Sassanid Persian Empire, right? So Persia reappears after, of course, the Hellenistic Greeks are chased out. So they battle off and on for a long time, right? So we have some Persian, Byzantine wars, or Roman wars. Those are going to exhaust both, leaving them vulnerable to somebody else later. We'll bring that up in a minute. But let's stick with Justinian here for a second. Why else do we care about Justinian, or at least the emperor after? Yeah, the code. So what was the code all about? So yeah, we have he's a great emperor, reconquered and stuck it out and beat the rebellion and all that. But he established Justinian's code. So why do we care about that? Okay, I hear a mix of good answers. Yeah, exactly. It's the first real attempt by a government to form a legal system other than just like arbitrarily making laws that enforce the hierarchy, right? We talked about it before. Most laws before just were meant to keep the people up top happy. The elite's nice and happy, paying less taxes. There are not many, laws that apply to them, etc. But this is the first one that really tried to make law like a profession. Like, here's a system of laws. Here's how you can interpret them. Started getting people that form professions like lawyers. So you get the ideas of jurors and using evidence to prove things. It's not like they have this wonderful complex system like we do now, but the seeds are sown for that. All right, so it's like the world's first legal system that can be thought about, articulated, interpreted, argued, and that's how Western law is going to start developing. That's the important sequence of it. Because we will talk about that later. We talk about that later when we talk about monarchs in Europe and having a right to a trial, a speedy trial, at least in the United States, and then treating prisoners humanely, all that kind of stuff is part of that legal system, that development of Western law, and that's kind of the start of it, Justinian's Code. So that's why you want to know Justinian's Code, at least from before. Okay, cool. So we got that. Is the Byzantine Empire economically relevant in period 1?
Yes.
Yeah, they are. So they're a big part of the Mediterranean Sea trade network, obviously. They do connect with the east off and on through what's their primary city that they lose to the Arabs? Antioch. Right, so they're certainly an economic force. Right? Religiously, they're unique religiously. They were a Christian, well, they are Christian. along with the Romans, up until about 1054 CE, when something happened, what's called the Great Schism, or the East-West Schism. What happened there, though? Something split with something? Right, so that's where we have a big split in Christianity. The Byzantine side goes the way of Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And the West stays with the Pope and Roman, they become known as Roman Catholics. Before it was just Christians. Now we have specific, I guess you'd say, sects or denominations. All right, so they pretty much just copy this exact same hierarchy, right? You had Pope, cardinals, priests all the way down, bishops, priests all the way down. Who's going to run this Eastern Orthodox Church?
The Patriarch.
The Patriarch of Constantinople, just kind of like a pope with another name, as well as bishops instead of cardinals. But before they try that, they try something else. They try having the emperor be both the political and Caesaropapism. But it becomes too difficult to have a political leader who's also your supposed moral religious leader. Because, I mean, you can't be forgiving and wonderful and moral if you're a political leader who has to punish people, kill people, and some of them were rather immoral with their lifestyles. So, at least according to Christian morality. So, Caesaropapism doesn't last. Again, that's where the religious leader is also the political leader, so the emperor. That goes out the gate, but they do adopt the patriarch system, which is much like the Roman Catholic Pope. And do they spread this Eastern Orthodox belief anywhere?
No.
Where? Who does it, first of all?
Cyril.
Cyril and Methodius, so they're primary missionaries. And which they convert multiple ethnic groups. What's the largest one that they convert? The Slavic people of Eastern Europe. So this chunk-ish, I mean, there's a bunch of Catholic enclaves in there too, but this largely converts to Eastern Orthodox, and that's due to the efforts of Cyril and Methodius. And those are the Slavs of Eastern Europe, and others, Bulgars and things like that. But all right, Byzantines, though, they are weakened by invaders, wars with the Persians, wars with the Arabs, as well as rebellions and disease. So they'll last for quite a while. And in fact, even though they get pushed back by the Arabs later, almost out of Turkey, they do have this moment, like a century or so, it's called the Macedonian Renaissance, when they actually go back and take back a lot of the territory they lost. And then the Turks come in and just take that all back. So it's kind of a seesaw thing, but we haven't talked about the Turks yet. What was that example of a rebellion that weakened the Byzantine Empire?
Basil the Copperhand.
Basil the Copperhand, right. So again, didn't succeed, but weakened them financially, militaristically. Because the Byzantine Empire had to turn around their army once or maybe twice from fighting the Arabs and the Caliphate to come back and put down this rebellion. So Basil the Copperhand. As well as, in the 1300s, a major disease epidemic. Probably the world's first epidemic. The Black Death, right? Came from where?
China.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. The Mongols did bring it across the Silk Road, but yes, it was from China, spread by Mongols across Asia, and it just ravaged Europe and the Mediterranean. Okay, so weakened by rebellion, disease, and of course conflicts with Arabs and later Turks. Or you just say Muslims. So we'll just say Arabs and Turks. Oh, and Persians. Man, it's everybody. Persians, Arabs, Turks. Most of the old classical empires, Persia, Han Dynasty, the Maurya Gupta empires of India that we didn't learn about but existed, most of those guys are going to fall for the same reasons. A combination of rebellions internally, disease epidemics, and of course, conflicts with other large states. All right, so is that all we have for the Byzantines? I think so, right? Yeah, I believe so. So who comes out of the woodwork and defeats, wipes out entirely one, and pushes back another of the two largest empires at the time in the 600s?
The Arabs.
The Arabs, right. So out of Arabia come this Muslim group, this Ummah, this caliphate, that is going to catch the Persians and Byzantines quite off guard, who have just been punching the crap out of each other, essentially, through a series of wars. And in fact, to the best of my knowledge, I believe there was also civil war in Persia going on. So the Arabs show up, defeat Persia, incorporated eventually, and push the Byzantines out of Egypt and out of the Middle East. And why was that important to the Byzantines?
Because they had
Yeah, that was a really lucrative area for them regarding trade. Okay, cool. So let's zoom in on Islam then, because they bust out of Arabia in the 600s and 700s. All right, so who started it? Muhammad. All right, Islam. And he is going to have that vision in the desert, of course, writing his beliefs down on the Quran, right, in Arabic. What are the 5 pillars? Hajj, one true God, and Muhammad the Prophet. Ramadan, 5 times a day. Fasting, yeah. Almsgiving, nice, cool. So we've got one God, which is Allah, just the name for God in Arabic. Muhammad is the Prophet. We've got, these aren't in order, by the way. The Hajj, we've got fasting. We've got the praying 5 times a day towards Mecca, as well as, almsgiving. So, Islam then, some of these beliefs, are these all original ideas? No. They've syncretized some beliefs. What did they syncretize? Fasting, okay, they certainly syncretized fasting, likely from Christianity or Judaism. Okay, what else? Monotheism, right, from Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Judaism at that point, right? And they're surrounded by that. You got Zoroastrianism here, Judaism, Christianity here. They're surrounded by that. What Arabic beliefs did they keep, though?
Hajj.
Yeah, the Hajj, the Kaaba, that's in Mecca, all right? That's going to be kept from their pagan Arab beliefs, and they're going to kind of mix those things all to make what is the structure of Islam. Cool. He tries going to Mecca and showing this new system off, but they don't like it. Why don't they like it? Almsgiving, right? Because this is a particularly wealthy and corrupt city. So he goes to Medina, gets some support, takes over Mecca, and keeps on going and conquers all of the Arab territories in where? In Arab. Arabian Peninsula. It's largely Saudi Arabia now. But yeah, this Arabian Peninsula is united, and that's when they come out and they surprise everybody. They push back, defeat the Persians. They push back and don't defeat the Byzantines, but push them out of the Middle East and North Africa, and they keep going. So Muhammad unites the Arabs, then he dies, and we immediately have a controversy in the 600s. What's the controversy? Who should rule? Right, so the Sunnis say caliphs, and the Shia say right, so we immediately have a split as soon as Muhammad dies between the Sunni and the Shia, right? They believe brother-in-law should lead. I don't know why they consider that blood relative, because it's through marriage, but whatever. And they believe a caliph should be the leader. Okay, what's a caliph?
A
religious and political leader. Okay, cool. Islam, though, that's what the caliphate's essentially going to be initially, believes in this community of believers, where when you convert, you become a part of this community, and it's your duty to protect Islam and spread it. What was that concept? Ummah, right. So this Ummah is going to be a literal military force initially, and when a caliph is leading it, who has religious and political authority, what is that type of government called? Caliphate, right. So they go around. After Muhammad, we have a period known as the 4 caliphs. They're leading things, and they conquer into Persia, into North Africa, into Mesopotamia. But they come across a good civilization that knows how to administer empires. Persia, right. So they start adopting centralized administration, policies or tactics, and they start developing these local rulers that are not religious authority figures. They still have to enforce the religious laws, but they can't change religious laws or ideas. But they are political leaders, and those are sultans. Yeah, exactly. And the rulers of these provinces or regions are sultans. And what do we call that type of form of government? Sultanate, right? Remember the difference. A caliph has both religious and political authority, much like a Caesaro papism type thing. But sultans have to enforce the religious laws, but they can't change them, right? But they can change their own local political laws, exactly. Okay, and that becomes the dominant form of government for Arabs. Okay, but however, we have well, human nature takes over, and we have a more so greed-based coup/takeover. A tribe or portion of this group is going to run things until about 750. What is that new caliphate going to be called? Umayyad, right. So they conquer into North Africa, into Spain, into Central Asia, Persia, and they are the ones that get to the Turks. They even defeat two, I think it was them, that defeat the Tang dynasty, which was in China as they were expanding westward. All right, so they stopped Chinese expansion. All right, so that's Umayyad until about 750. And then who usurps power from them? The Abbasid, right. And they're going to be the ones that last, even though they don't rule over directly this entire area. It's mostly just local sultanates that are paying tribute to them. But this Abbasid Caliphate is going to last all the way till about 1258, when who destroys their primary city of Baghdad? The Mongols, right. Mongols come in, destroy the city. But caliphates continue. So Mongols end this. And again, remind me what their imperial city was called again?
Baghdad.
Baghdad, right. We'll talk more about that next week as far as like, you know, how they had the House of Wisdom and all that stuff. But so Baghdad's destroyed. However, most of the caliphate's military force at this point is not just Arabs. In fact, they're mostly non-Arabs. So whether they're Persians or the peoples of Mesopotamia or Egyptians or Turks or whoever they are, what's the term we use for that? Mamluks, right. So even though they lose to the Mongols and they're chased back, the Mamluks actually move and establish a caliphate where? Not Mesopotamia, Egypt, yeah. So we actually have like a Mamluk, run out of room here. I'll start over here again. A Mamluk run caliphate state. And that lasts for a very long time, actually. So it's that weird situation where non-Arab, non-Egyptians are going to rule Egypt for quite a while. All the way up until, as far as I know anyway, they're not really chased out, or their power isn't quite taken until another Muhammad, and Muhammad Ali does it in the mid-19th century when they form the Khedivate of Egypt. That's a topic way down the road, though. All right, so that's everything except how they convert people inside of the caliphate, right? We covered all the other stuff, though?
Yeah.
The what?
The first class citizen.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Cool. So, a lot of people were converted because either they liked Islam's egalitarian appeal with the almsgiving, or they just were impressed by the military success and they willfully adopted. But two groups were very resistant to Muslim conversion. What were those two groups? Yeah, Christians and Jews, right. So we have some Christian and Jewish resistance to conversion. But the Muslim state went a little easier on them because they considered them, I can't remember their phrase, brothers of the book or something like that, since they're all rooted in that whole old Jewish, like Torah origin. So they have a policy meant to encourage conversion, not force it. So I can still be, technically, I mean, it's not like it's perfect or wonderful, but it's better than death. They can still be Christian or Jewish adherents in these caliphates and sultanates, but what's the consequence? There's a price, literally. Yeah, there's a literal price. So there's the jizya tax for maintaining, these are for non-Muslims, right? Specifically Christians and Jewish people for the most part. A tax for non-Muslims. So you can still do it. You're still protected by the state, but you got to pay a fee, literally. And also, they're not quite seen and treated equally. Yeah, they're second-class citizens. So that's the dhimmi status. And that means there's certain positions not available to them. They can't be a part of the government, the military. It also means people will not treat them well. So obviously, I'm surrounded by mostly Muslim people. It's going to be a bit harder to, live peacefully or engage in business or ask favors or trust them. So they do have to live with that stigma. And a lot of people are either going to leave the areas ruled by the Muslims, speaking about Jews and Christians, and some of them go into Central Asia. They're not going to see much success there, though. And a lot of them go into Europe, right? So this Jewish population in Europe is going to balloon even further than it did from just the Jewish diaspora. All right, Christians too, but Christianity already dominates Europe since the Romans. So, all right, that's everything we covered, right?
Yeah.
Sweet. We'll pick up there later. Have a good one. Study hard. So who were my Turks that were converted, and then you're going to go ahead and start some conquests here?
Seljuk.
Yeah, Seljuks. So if you guys remember, the Umayyad and Abbasid Caliphates reached out to Central Asia, converted some of those Turkish tribes. They become Sunni Muslim, and they're going to go on their own wave of conquest. They're going to come in, they're going to conquer into Persia, right? That's kind of making them Turco-Persian. They're Sunni Islam, and they're going to chase the Byzantine Empire out of Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. Arabs, they were locked in with the Arabs there for a couple hundred years, but then, well, like 300 years. Then the Seljuk Turks come in. They beat the Byzantines at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071 and chased them, the Byzantines, out of Anatolia. So they're going to take some territory in the Middle East, and they're going to hold on to that from, I believe it was 1037 to about 1260. Who's the empire that comes in behind them and chases them out of there?
Mongols.
Yeah, the Mongols. Okay, cool. So one thing I forgot to mention, I think, earlier on Monday, was this scared a lot of Christians because it chased the Byzantine Empire, who actually was like on the offensive and getting territory back and doing well in the thousands-ish. They got chased out. And this is where Europeans, so like the emperor of the Byzantine Empire and the Holy Roman Emperor, and all the kingdoms of Europe. In 1095, this is in your notes, but I totally forgot to talk about it. In 1095, they're going to start the First Crusade. Anybody know what a crusade is?
Like
knights.
Okay, they do use knights, part of the feudal system.
Wasn't it when like the Christians went back to like take over the Holy Land?
Yeah, exactly. So they basically lost the Christian and Jewish holy cities of like Jerusalem and some of those areas that like Jesus and them were in. So they wanted it back from the Muslims. So this is where a lot of Christian kings, like the Holy Roman Emperor, the kings of France, England, and others, the Byzantine Empire even a little bit, they're going to pay for and fund a European invasion of the Middle East. They have 3 or 4, no, actually it might have been more than that. Right, because the 4th one I think was the one where they actually just went for Constantinople, not even the Middle East. But regardless, the first couple were decently-ish successful. I mean, they didn't like totally win out or anything, but they did take eventually and hold on to a decent chunk of territory in the Middle East. So that's what the Crusades are. So I think the Crusaders are chased out in the 13th century, but for a couple centuries, 3-ish centuries, the Christians are going to hold on to a lot of territory, build like castles. That's why if you like go there, there's some like old rundown like European castles in the Middle East. It was because of the Crusades. And they're going to hold on to that for a little while, but they do eventually get chased out because I mean, they can't realistically fund and provide a bunch of troops across the Mediterranean Sea from these tiny little feudal kingdoms. Like they're not the Roman Empire; they can't keep that up. So eventually they do get chased out. But that's what the Crusades are, and the reason why I mention this is that's going to breed a lot of hostility between the Muslim states and the Christian states. That's going to continue onward for a while. In fact, because of this, the Islamic states are pretty much going to cut off the Europeans from trade with India and China. And that's going to come up again later in the Age of Exploration. But that's what the Crusades are. So about a 2-century-ish period where Europeans took and held on to some territory in the Middle East because that's where Jerusalem was. Does that make sense? All right, that's the Crusades, which I forgot to mention before. I can't remember the year of the last one, but it's basically about the 11th to 13th century. All right. However, the Mongols come in 1260 behind the Seljuks, take much of their territory, and of course chase them around Europe. I told you guys about that. They like a fraction of the Mongol army goes in and beats like all the Eastern European powers. They're going to set up what kind of governments in the Turks over in Anatolia? Emirates, right. So the Mongols are going to start emirates, which are like, you know, tiny little feudal kingdoms essentially. And which one of these emirates is going to emerge as the conquest? Yeah, they're going to conquer the rest and start the Ottoman Empire. Right, from out of those emirates comes the Ottoman Empire. and they're going to go from the late 1200s all the way to 1922. So not even 100 years ago, they were still technically an Ottoman Empire. All right. What else am I saying? What is an emirate, though?
It's like a government thing.
Yeah, so who runs it then? Yeah, one of the Turkic or Arab or whoever it is lords that are there. It's kind of like a little feudal state, basically. And they have to kind of like pay tribute to the Mongol Empire. But eventually they break away, obviously, and start their own after they're conquered by the Ottoman Empire, or the Ottomans from that emirate. All right, so those are the Seljuk Turks. We good on that? All right, how does Islam get into India?
Turkish invaders.
Yeah, so those Persian Turco invaders are going to also turn their sights to at least northwestern India. So pretty quickly, around this territory-ish is going to be under the control of the Sultanate of Delhi, which it's going to be the first major Muslim empire in India. All right, it's going to last about 300 years, Delhi Sultanate. Remember, those are Turkish and Persian invaders coming in to bring Islam. What's the dominant religion there, though, before we answer your question?
Hinduism.
Hinduism, right. What was your question to me?
So right below that, were those the camel kings or?
Yeah, down here in the corner. You saw the History of the World video or whatever? Yeah, that's a good one. It's a good one. But yeah, I actually know very little about those, and so do most people. They're not even in the AP World curriculum. But yes, most of these empires will be centered around the northern regions of India. Like the earlier empires, like the Maurya Gupta empires and things like that. They, for the most part, don't incorporate this bottom half because of that. Regardless, Delhi Sultanate. It's going to go about 1206 to 1526. And it's not the smoothest empire. The last 3 centuries, they technically hold off the Mongols when they try invading, or they're in the area anyway. But what are some problems that plague these guys?
Religious conflicts.
Yeah, with who?
Hindu South.
Well, they're Muslims. Who are they in conflict
Hindu.
with? Yeah, the Hindu people. That's mostly Hindi people. So we have a lot of Hindu-Muslim conflicts because there are several Hindu kingdoms here, and they're not too happy about the approach of the Delhi Sultanate. Because what are these Muslims like? Are they those nice, sort of convert you by peaceful ways sort of empire? No, they're what? Yeah, they're iconoclasts, right? They destroy Hindu temples and relics. They essentially force strict taxes. So Hindu-Muslim conflicts. They are, at least at times in history, iconoclastic. Meaning, of course, they destroy Hindu temples, relics, things like that. And they have a pretty extreme taxation policy that the Hindu people are not really willing to pay up, but they have to by force for a while. But I mean, if you try to rule a government through force, I mean, it's just not going to last as long as it could. Like pretty much all of the long-lasting empires of the world, Rome, some of the Chinese dynasties, like they weren't overly strict or demanding on people, and they lasted a lot longer. All right, so iconoclastic, overtaxation, going to be their downfall. The Mughals take over, but that's not till period 2. We'll talk about that in period 2. You guys get the Delhi Sultanate?
Yeah.
All right, so Islam's going to spread. Those are the areas it spreads to through conquest. Any different color? Through conquest. What areas does it spread to by trade? So actually, let's recap this. Let's do the black regions. It's by conquest. So we definitely got the Delhi Sultanate, obviously. Obviously, we have Anatolia, because that's where the Turks go. They're the Ottomans. But where else was converted by conquest?
Middle East,
Middle East.
North Africa.
North Africa.
Spain.
Parts of Spain, yeah.
Central Asia.
Persia.
Central Asia and Persia. So Persia, Central Asia. Right, you can't forget where it originated, the Arabian Peninsula. All right, not the perfect map, but that's roughly where Islam's going to spread to by conquest. The Ottoman Empire will bring it into like southeastern Europe later, but that's not till later. All right, so where does it spread by trade, though?
West and East.
Okay, West and East Africa. All right, why am I not highlighting here?
Desert.
Sahara Desert, yeah. West African kingdoms, East African kingdoms, where else?
Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia, parts of it anyway.
Parts of the islands.
Indonesia, yeah. These are the areas in which Buddhism is going to spread by trade. All right, but I want to know how. How does it spread by trade? Why would people peacefully convert just because Well, why would they?
Trade benefits.
Yeah, you get the trade benefits. So, which states are at the center of pretty much all world trade at the time? Muslim states, Christian states, Chinese dynasties, what? Muslim states, right. So you've got like the Umayyad, the Abbasid Caliphate, and other caliphates and sultanates inside of there. They're pretty much connected to all major trade routes at the time. What are those major trade routes? Indian Ocean Trade Network.
Silk
Road.
Silk Road, yeah.
Mediterranean.
Mediterranean Sea Trade Network.
Sub-Saharan.
Yeah, Trans-Saharan. In fact, in this era, at roughly 1000 CE, they make this connection. Some Arabs domesticate camels. They form caravans, which are large groups that bring water and supplies so you don't just die in the desert. And camels can survive much longer in the desert. So we have caravans that actually officially connect West Africa across the desert for the first time, starting about 1000 CE. Where am I going to write that? 1000 CE. Arabs cross Sahara. Right, so that connects West Africa with these Arabs. So, who do the Arabs learn how to govern through?
Persians.
The Persians, right. The West Africans are going to do the same thing. They're going to learn how to govern through the Arabs, who of course learned through the Persians. All right, so West Africans actually benefit quite a bit from this connection. All right, they get access to goods through trade, right? And they also learn how to govern themselves, or at least better, because the Arabs learned from the Persians and they passed that on for the most part. All right, but West Africa, it gets to West Africa, and why is it different in West Africa than the other areas that we've labeled in black?
They don't enforce it.
They don't enforce it on everybody. Who largely converts to Islam in West Africa?
The kings and nobles.
Yeah, the kings and nobles, the people that rule, right? Why would they do that? I just explained some of the benefits.
Trade.
Trade, but they also wanted to learn from them, like how to run the government, things like that. Cool. So, West Africa's connected. So the first connection was with the Empire of Ghana. And now we have Mali in about the, what one was it exactly? So we have Ghana from about the 600s to the 1200s. And then in the 1200s to about the 1600s, we have Mali. All right, those are the two main empires in that rough area here. Now, the cities that at the edges here that are connected to trade routes, those become the most wealthy, obviously. What's the major one in Mali that becomes Timbuktu? Yeah. And these guys become rather wealthy because they have a couple things that Arabs want. They have a lot of gold, right? Especially Mansa Musa. Oh, I should have asked that as a question, but whatever. Mansa Musa. They have a lot of salt and copper, but the Arabs also start in roughly 1000 CE. What trade? It involves people.
Slaves.
Slaves, yes. This is where the West African slave trade begins. Like 500 years before the Portuguese do it. It's already been ongoing. So this is where West African kingdoms go out, gather slaves, and then they sell them or trade them to anyone who's willing to buy. In this case, it's going to be the Arabs, and they're going to do that for several centuries. All right. So we have gold, copper, salt, and slaves are going to be the primary things traded. And again, who was that ruler of Mali with all the gold? Yeah. He had so much gold he caused inflation in the caliphates as he went on his Hajj journey, because he was just handing it out so much that it just reduced the value of it. That's how much he had, right? So, of course, that's Mansa Musa. But again, the key attribute here is the reason why the upper echelons of West African society become Islamic or Muslim is because they wanted the trade benefits and they wanted to learn Arab administration. All right, so make sure you don't forget that. So I would say the Y, Islam, administration, advice, as well as trade with the caliphates. Those are the reasons why. And again, don't forget, they don't enforce it on their citizenry. All right, so like over here, you have to become a Muslim or else what happens? Yeah, jizya and dhimmi status, right, exactly right. You're basically forced to or penalized for not doing it. West Africa, though, they're not going to care until the Songhay dynasty, but that's later in period 2. All right, I have to like check myself because I keep wanting to take the old ones from last year, but we got new ones. All right, any questions about West Africa? Okay, what else did I talk about with that? Just the diaspora? Oh, and the Golden Age too, that's right. So, these blue areas. We talked about why they converted in West Africa, but why are all these other blue areas, why do they become Muslim? Why are people in that area converting? Because it's not like there's just so many Arabs and Turks moving out here that they take over the population. They do go there. These diasporic communities go out there, but they're still small. Why do the people around them convert to Islam?
Trade.
Right, they want access to the trade benefits because the peoples that are connected with all the trade routes essentially back then are the Muslim states. So these merchants would start towns, so the black will be obviously Arabs or Muslims. They go out and start these little towns and mosques in these areas to connect to the edges of the trade routes. And then of course if people want to trade with them, they're better off being Muslim to do that, to even engage in trade or to get good deals or whatever. So what you have here very quickly is the areas in which these Arab merchants go convert to Islam to get those trade benefits. All right, so does that make sense? What's a diasporic community? Yeah, it's spreading. So it's like majority Arabs here, but then a tiny little chunk of them goes and settles surrounded by other people. So diasporas in period 1. We have certainly the Muslim diaspora. We have technically 2 more. What's the other one I've talked about that had Chinese, right? So when we talk about the Song Dynasty next, a lot of Chinese merchants are going to settle in these, Southeast Asian areas and cities and establish merchant communities, right? And we still have those. Places like Singapore is still mostly Han Chinese, even though it's surrounded by Malay and Thai people. All right, so the Chinese. This one I didn't talk about as much. I talked about more from like the pre-1200 era, but there's another group of people that are kind of wandering the earth without a homeland, settling along trade routes and in Europe. Who are those people that got displaced by the Romans? The Jewish people, right. So I've still got a lot of Jewish people sort of wandering around, settling along the Silk Road, and a lot of them in Europe too. So those are my major diasporas. Any questions about that? Sweet. This is the golden age of Islam. So what are some technological or cultural innovations that come out of this golden age of Islam when the Muslim states dominate the wealth and territory of the post-classical era?
Trade.
Trigonometry.
All right, sweet. So we've got some inventors of algebra and or at least some refiners of algebra. Inventors of trigonometry. Do we have any female literature? Yes. I'm going to spell these names wrong, so I got to. Yeah, Aisha. Let's not spell this wrong when we find it. These are new terms from the new curriculum. All right, cool. So, female literature, or at least Arabic female literature. We have Aisha. Let me spell this bad boy correctly. I can't read my writing, so I guess that doesn't do any good. Al-Baniya. Baniya. There we go. All right, the inventor of trigonometry, that one I can actually read, Nasir al-Din al-Turi. Good luck on the quiz with those. So, those are the prominent Muslim intellectuals and writers of the time. And also, too, they make some advancements for medicine. What do they do with medicine?
Traveling clerks.
Yeah, hospitals. What else?
Traveling
clinics, which is kind of like traveling hospitals. What else? Yeah, they start tracking specific diagnoses, trying to predict what's going to happen, avoid it, cure it, things like that. All right, so a lot of medical advances. Well, you guys know those at least. All right, and a lot of this knowledge, whether it was Greek or Roman or Persian or Arab or whatever it was stored in a large library or house that was much like the old library of Alexandria before that got burned down. What was it?
The Baghdad House of Wisdom.
Yeah, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. What's that the capital of? Okay, yeah, now it's Iraq. But what was it the capital of? I knew I'd catch you off guard. That was last week. Who knows it anymore? The Abbasid Caliphate, right. That's where the Mongols roll in, siege them, and destroy pretty much everything, burn down the House of Wisdom. So whatever was in it, we don't know. Oh, quick refresher. when Baghdad does get sieged and the Abbasid Caliphate falls to the Mongols, a lot of those non-Arab military personnel, called what? Mamluks, moved their caliphate where?
Egypt.
To Egypt for quite a while, right. Okay. That's the golden age of Islam. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, the one other thing I wanted to mention is a couple technologies trickle across these caliphates to Europe from like China or even just themselves. What were a few of those technologies?
Gunpowder.
Okay, gunpowder is actually the Mongols. If I said that last week, that was a mistake. All right, but printing and paper, as well as navigational technology like the astrolabe, which is basically, it reads the stars to tell you how far north or south you are on the planet. And even the compass later are going to come across that way. So astrolabe, compass, and again, compass always points north so you know what direction you're going. Those are going to travel through and make their ways up. And lastly, I know I mentioned this last week, but what was the cultural clothing item that the Arabs copied from the Persian upbringing?
Veils.
Yeah, the veils, right, exactly. So that is the golden age of Islam. Any questions about that? Sweet, moving on. Now to the golden age of Imperial China. Oh, let's see if you guys can give me the five. They're not all after 1200. In fact, two of them are preceding it, but it's better to know them and how they contributed to Chinese society going forward. It's like a unit 0. If this is unit 1, that's like a unit 0 type thing. Who remembers the 5 dynasties that we... Sui, Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming. Nice. Nice. Oops, it's reversed. Which one of these bad boys banned and crushed Buddhism with the edicts on Buddhism? Tang. Which ones chased out the Mongols?
Song.
Nope. Ming. Which one were the Mongols? Yuan. Which one reestablished a unified Chinese state system and made the Grand Canal? Su. Yeah. Good. I think like 2/3 you get these. This isn't bad considering I just like gave you the list yesterday. So what the hell did the Song Dynasty do? Foot binding. That's a memorable one. Okay, we'll go over them. That's not bad though, considering you guys had no idea what any of these were like barely 24 hours ago. All right. Su. Very short-lived, but the reason why we want to know about them is they sort of reunified China. It's not as bad as the Warring States period, but there is a period of disunity in China after the fall of the Han till the Su dynasty. Now there is like a Jin dynasty in between, but we don't really care about that. It doesn't unify all of the Han Chinese people. Su does though. Short-lived, but again, they reestablish unified China. They make the Grand Canal, which is very helpful for the Chinese economy and people. But they're quickly taken over by the Tang. And that's going to be roughly 600 to 900 CE-ish. What did the Tang do? There's a few things.
Edicts of Buddhism.
Okay, they go after Buddhism. So before we get to going after Buddhism, which we already mentioned, what are they doing that motivates them to go after Buddhism? Expanding, right. So they're going to expand the territory of what was the Han Dynasty through parts of Central Asia under Mongolia, into Central Asia, past Mongolia. And they're only going to be stopped by the Umayyad Caliphate, right? Remember when they hired those Turkish mercenaries, the Chinese did, and then the Umayyad just paid them more, so they swapped sides and won the battle for the Umayyad Caliphate. So China expands quite a bit, but that is not going to be cheap. So Tang, they're going to expand China substantially, but that's not cheap. So how do they go after getting some money?
The temple.
They go after the Buddhist temples, right. So they make illegal, or they ban, Buddhism with a series of laws known as Edicts on Buddhism in the 800s, Emperor Wuzong. And not that they were lying, but what's the reason they give for banning Buddhism?
Goes against Confucianism.
Yeah, it breaks the social harmony and unity of Confucianism, right? And it does. They're not wrong. right? But what was the behind the scenes reason?
Money.
They wanted
They
money.
wanted the money. Wait, but I thought Buddhists didn't have any money.
But they
But they didn't have temples.
What brand of Buddhism do I have in China? Yeah, it's called Mahayana, right? So the Buddhists in China are Mahayana, and they don't, spend riches on themselves, but they kind of see Buddha as a deity. So they'll spend a lot of money bejeweling, bedazzling the temples and the golden figurines of Buddha and stuff like that. So the Tong, they definitely do go after Buddhism because it's anti-Confucianism, right? They lose their social harmony and traditions and social order and all that stuff. But also, they wanted that money from the Buddhist temples, the Mahayana Buddhist temples. So they ban it, soldiers go in, wreck the place up. Buddhism pretty much gets booted out of China for the most part. Bless you. Extreme sneezes. Buddhism pretty much gets booted out of China. They melt down the stuff, they get the money, and reinstate Confucianism. So what is that called, by the way? It starts in the Tong, goes to the Song. Yeah, Neo-Confucianism. It's like a refocusing on Confucianism, right? So this is actually kind of a Tong and Song, but it definitely starts with the Tong. So we have Neo-Confucianism. Thanks to the writings of Han Yu, or partially thanks to that. So what do? Besides re-emphasizing it, they do something with their government to make it harder to get into.
You're gonna take the exam.
Yeah, they like reinstate or make more difficult the Confucian examination system. What's the highest positions besides the emperor in China?
Government.
Yeah, the government positions, right? That's a big part of their Confucian hierarchy. So to get those jobs, you have to pass some incredibly difficult Confucian examinations, essentially. Like the upper class Chinese would, pay tutors to, tutor their sons for years to take these things. They would still fail, right, to become a government official. But that was the goal. So that's Neo-Confucianism. They're going to bring back the Confucian examination system. The one other thing the Tong does is they are going to conquer into Southeast Asia a little bit. They come in contact with the Vietnamese people, or the Viet people, and they're going to borrow the rice from that Champa Empire, which is named after that empire. Champa rice, right. And that rice is going to help grow their population because it's rice that's more drought resistant, and it cultivates in half the time. So very quickly, you have a very good and drought resistant form of rice. More food always equals more people, so we have population growth during the Tang Dynasty. Good on the Tong?
Yep.
All right, cool. So we're almost to actual 1200 in China now. Now we're to 1200. Who's going to take over after the Tang Dynasty? Yep, Song. From like 900-ish, it's like 918 or something, to, well, whenever the Mongols show up. 76? Whatever, 1200s. All right, I need water. So, there's a couple things the Song do. They, of course, keep the Neo-Confucianism momentum going. They, of course, solidify that state system. They do lose the Mongols later. But what are some of their main contributions to history? Some of them good, some of them not so good. Bookbinding, right, okay. Not that necessarily like they forced all women to do this, but it became a common practice back then as a part of the more patriarchal family establishment back then, was that women would footbind. Why would they do this though?
So high class.
It was an upper class thing, exactly. So back then, in East Asia and Southeast Asia, why was it better to be lighter skinned?
Because you're not laboring.
Yeah, not that it's actually better, obviously, but they thought of it as, if you're lighter skinned, that means you're inside, which means you're not working, which means you're higher class, because you have enough money to not work. So they wanted to be paler, and they also wanted to show they needed to work. So by foot binding and making your foot like the size of a smashed up fist as you grow up, I mean, can I work a field if I got a foot like that? No, not even. Right, so that's a sign of class, like, oh, I don't need to work because I have my feet bound voluntarily, or at least your parents voluntarily did it to you. And then you were generally more pale. It was also a sign of like feminine beauty to them back then. Obviously, we think it's disgusting, and it is, and it just looks disgusting, but they saw it as a sign of feminine beauty. So foot binding. It's always a good one to be known for. All right, the other one they're known for that is different from most civilizations back then is they start trying to make a profitable government enterprise. What is it called when I'm doing something for profit? Commercialization, right. They are going to become commercialized, at least partly. All right, again, just to recap, back then, most people weren't working for profit. They worked for somebody as a slave or a serf or a peasant or whatever, right? And they would just pay with their labor. That would get them protection, but then they couldn't leave and they had to keep doing that work. This is different though. This is, I'm trying to sell it and make money, which gives me more incentive to do that. Europeans are going to take that and run with it later. But the Chinese are the ones that really start doing it, at least on a state level. So they have kind of an early industrial revolution-ish. They use like the water wheel and several other things to learn how to smelt steel much better or quicker than anybody else in the world. They like burn down entire forests to do it, but they do it better than anybody else. So they have a lot of iron and steel works. What are other things that people want to buy from China?
Porcelain.
Porcelain,
Silk.
silk, and tea, right. They find out they can make a lot of money trading with the rest of the world, right? So this is what starts that Chinese diaspora, where they send out merchant communities to connect with the Indian Ocean Trade Network. And they find out that people of India, the Muslim states, and even Africa really want these things. And they can make a lot of money off of it. So they go all in. And they form an organization, Maritime
Tax supervisor.
Trade Supervisorate. All right, that is what's going to be a government entity. Maritime means by ocean, by sea. Maritime, oh, I already forgot it. Trade Supervisorate. So that was a government entity, the 900s, that either sold stuff for profit for the government, or who would they tax?
Imports.
Imports, or the merchants, right? The imports that they would get. Right, and that would funnel a lot of money into the Song government. So again, they would tax imports. That's called a tariff, by the way. And they would also sell goods directly themselves. And what is this money going for? Obviously, some of it corruptly goes to the government officials, but what else is it going for to help China? Infrastructure, military, right. And that's going to really help them out. So they commercialize and expand their maritime trade. All right. Who was the last real Chinese person, or at least dynasty, that briefly tried this maritime trade thing and it worked out pretty well? The Ming, with Admiral Zheng He. They're the last ones to do this. And then they make the terrible mistake of, so in the 1400s they did this. They reversed it. They said, screw it, we're not going to pay for ships and trade. We're going to focus on preventing another Mongol invasion. But it's not going to work. They're still going to get northern invaders. They're not Mongols, but they're still northern pastoral invaders, and they're going to fall later on to that. But it's going to be a big problem. We'll talk about it later when we talk about the Spanish. Any questions about the Song dynasty? Nada? All right. So it is the golden age of imperial China. They're doing rather well. They're wealthy. Everyone wants their stuff, and they want nothing. So how is that reflected in their attitude? What new concept did they come up with?
Tribute system.
Not the the tribute system, but like, what's their attitude first? How do they see themselves compared to others?
Middle Kingdom.
The Middle Kingdom, right? Like the center, or an elevated portion of civilization, right? So they start getting condescending and cocky. They see themselves as the center of the world, and they were, I don't want to say they were right, but people definitely wanted their stuff, and they did not want much from other people. Right, so this is where we start getting what you guys already mentioned, that tribute system. What is this tribute system? How does it work?
You have the bag for trade.
Yeah, if I'm a non-Chinese person, doesn't matter who I am, just non-Chinese, and I want to trade with China, I have to either beg, I have to present a gift and pretty much beg the Chinese emperor or a Chinese official to engage in trade. It's called bestowal, to give that gift and return it. So the Chinese could just say, no, your gift's not good enough, or we don't like your people, or whatever. Or they could say yes, and they would often backhandedly give you an even better gift to say, we don't even need your stuff, we're just allowing you to trade with us because we're nice. So that's the first part of it. You've got to offer a gift and beg to trade. What about the surrounding countries or states in Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, the Champa Empire, Khmer Empire.
They had to do like an annual thing.
Yeah, like a protectorate. So they had to like essentially pay, at least annually, for the Chinese to protect them / not invade them. All right, so that's a two-parter. So beg / gift for trade, but also you had the protectorate states. So the surrounding smaller states in Philippines, Indonesia, Champa Empire, Khmer Empire, Japan, Korea, all had to sort of pay tribute for protection from the Chinese, or by the Chinese. You guys got that?
Yep.
Sweet. Now let's do feudalism. We'll be done. So, what is feudalism? All right, let's start with how it works then, maybe. So, when? How about when is feudalism?
Medieval.
Dark Ages.
Medieval.
The Dark Ages.
The medieval, yeah, Dark Ages / Middle Ages, right. So what do all those times essentially mean? What time to what time?
Roman fall to
Yeah.
Renaissance.
Fall of Rome to the Renaissance, right? This is the Middle Ages, or the Dark Ages, at least the first part of it, or the medieval times, all right? And this is about 485 CE to about 1450 CE. Renaissance means rebirth, by the way, so Europe wakes up. They come out of their slumber of doing nothing for 1,000 years. All right, Middle Ages. So what was lost when Rome fell over here in Western Europe? Because remember, the Byzantines keep going, so they're rolling. But the Europeans over here in the West, what did they lose? Protection. From who?
From the
Greek invaders, Huns, Goths, Germans, other Celts and Franks, like all kinds of stuff. So they need a system of protection that the Roman Empire once provided. All right, so what is their system of protection? Feudalism. All right, cool. So give me the hierarchy.
Kings, nobles,
Knights.
knights, artisans, serfs.
Serfs.
All right, serfs or peasants. All right. The hell's a serf?
Slaves.
Basically slaves.
Basically slaves. So what are they doing?
They're
working
the
for
land
everybody
the
else.
king, and they're allowed to use the stuff on the land.
Okay, cool. So let's back up on that. What's their chunk of land called? A manor, right? Sometimes feudalism is known as manorialism, right? So I've got my manor, my plot of land. I've got my king or my lord over here in the castle. And on this land, I've got serfs. They have the right to use that land, you know, for hunting or fishing or whatever. And what is that called? You already said it. This is called, yeah, common land. So they have the right to use that land. But can these serfs, like, leave or? No, they're stuck there. The Lord requires them to work. They pay for this right to use the land through their labor. That's called corvée labor. Basically, you pay in your labor. You pay taxes in your labor. All right. Did we really have money in Europe back then? What was the main currency?
Grains.
Yeah.
Yeah, the grains, right? You get them from working. But yeah, the grains, that was pretty much what you would pay with. So these guys would farm. They would keep what they needed to survive, and the rest would go to who?
The king.
The king of the Lord, right, exactly. And they stockpile it, and so they're benefiting from this, obviously. What service do they provide to these serfs who are working?
Protection.
Protection. How?
If someone tries to invade, they'll protect them.
Okay, they might pay other peasants or knights as like defenders. And what if there's like a famine or a drought?
They
Yeah, they'd stock up that food and they would dish that back out to them for help, essentially, right? So these serfs and everyone below would swear an oath to obey in exchange for protection the people above them. What's that swearing of the oath called? Fealty, yeah. Okay. And what do I call the people who are below me on this hierarchy?
Vassals.
Vassals, right. So who's a vassal for the nobles?
Knights.
Knights,
Right from
artisans,
below. What about the king?
all.
All, right. Vassals. All right. There's a complication, though. Why aren't the kings necessarily in power? Who do they depend on?
Nobles.
Nobles, right. Because the nobles agreed if the kings ask for help or taxes, they'll send it. But if they don't like the king, could they just not do those things?
Yeah.
Yeah, and many times if they team up and fight against the king and his own army and depose or get rid of him. You're fine, Julia. And get rid of him. All right? So that's going to prevent really any major empire from emerging from Western Europe because of feudalism. There are a couple attempts, though. See ya. There are a couple attempts, though, and that'll be what we finish with. So, who's my first main attempt in the 800s to form a large centralized empire?
Charlemagne.
Yeah, Charlemagne. I forgot to mention it in the notes, but his empire is called the Carolingian Empire.
That was in there.
I know, I forgot to mention it though. I know it was on the notes.
Yeah.
800s. And he conquers a lot of the kingdoms in France, northern Italy, and Germany. And people are like, oh, sweet. It's smaller, but it's kind of like Romish. Like, we're coming back to our glory days. Pope gets excited, goes and anoints him. Anoints him what?
Holy Roman.
Holy Roman Emperor. And they come up with this kooky, terrible system where 9 electors, I don't know if that's the original number, but 9 electors, when he dies and passes on, elect a new Holy Roman Emperor, right? But that makes the position itself really vulnerable to what?
Bribery.
Bribery, right? So a lot of people are just not going to respect the position because it can just literally be bought if you're rich enough, and plenty of people do it, right? So elected, at least after Charlemagne, elected, and it's not going to be respected. And I've got hundreds of tiny little feudal kingdoms here in Germany and Italy, and sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't. So I think you can surmise that that's not a very good centralized government. A centralized government, there should be governors or satraps or whatever that listen and obey the laws and work along with you. But this Holy Roman Empire, despite how long it lasts, never going to have that set up. All right, you're always going to have certain princes or kings or lords not listening or teaming up against the emperor or whatever, or not paying their taxes. So it's going to be a very nasty, unsuccessful system. All right. So that's not going to work. But we do start getting the modern identities for 3 European countries. They're not entirely there yet, but they have kings and they start developing a sense of identity based on common language. What are those 3? France, England, Spain, right. So England, in the 900s, they're starting to form what is going to be later England. France as well, the 900s. And lastly, once they chase the Arabs out in the 1400s, we're going to have Spain. And man, my voice is going out. So what a good time to end it. See you tomorrow. All right, let's start with the civilization up here in Scandinavia that is actually before 1200, but it does establish a solid set of trade routes up here in Europe, which are relevant. Who are they? Vikings. Yeah, there you go. You're all like so all of a sudden around the late 8th century, 700 or so, with the Vikings, and they're going to be moving, be it settling or invading and raiding. Why all of a sudden in the late 700s?
There was a warming period.
Yeah, we have a warming period. Okay, cool. From, I can't remember the exact year it starts. I believe it's just the 8th century to the 14th, but warming period. So that means the Earth's a little bit warmer, so the summer's a little bit longer, and I can now farm further north and south, right? Because normally this would have been off limits, too cold, but with that warming period, they could farm up here. Viking population grew. There's not much room up there. It's mostly mountains. And they needed to move, so they do move, all right? So they are going to raid all in the Baltic Sea, the North Sea. In fact, they're going to discover some places too. What do they discover?
America.
Yeah, they go to Iceland first. Then there's already people there, by the way. And they go to Greenland. I think there were people in Greenland too, but there was, well, actually there's people in North America as well. But they discover what they call the Vinland, or the Vineland, and that is going to be the Americas, Newfoundland and Canada. All right, it's Leif Erikson. Okay, cool. So, but they don't stay, they come back. But we found Viking settlements, so we know they're there. But again, who cares about that? We care about what the Vikings did as far as establishing a more consolidated trade network and trade cities up there. Because we care about that because when the plague comes around, it's going to spread through that trade network. All right, so what advantage did the Vikings have that allowed them to explore and conquer so well as far as like going up rivers and stuff?
They had long ships.
Yeah, longships, the Viking longship, right. Right, and that was a very shallow ship, and that was like, you know, it wasn't like a deep V, it was more like a wide U, which allowed them to float in shallower water so they could go up rivers. And they went up some crazy rivers. They went all the way down the Volga River. They went down into what was like essentially the Byzantine Empire, with the Slavic people. They invade up rivers into like Central Europe and Western Europe, and they're going to just invade everywhere they can, all the way to the Black Sea, to the point that the Byzantines hire them to fight and combat the Arabs and bodyguard the emperor because they were such fierce fighters. Not that it's super relevant, but why are they such fierce fighters?
Because they don't care about that.
Yeah, they weren't as concerned about not dying in battle, because what was their way to get to heaven? Or not heaven, but their Valhalla, their afterlife. Yeah, to die in battle. So they weren't as concerned with living. All right, that scared a lot of people. Plus, they were taller than everybody too, so that added to it. All right, but again, there's significance because they go from about 795 to about 1100 is when they stopped doing their large-scale raids. They have a lot of internal strife, and also a lot of them convert to Christianity. Oh, speaking of which, what were they doing that really messed with Europeans' minds initially?
They were destroying like churches and.
Yeah, they were going after like churches and cathedrals and monks, like unarmed people, which was weird to the Europeans because Europeans never did that because they're all Christians. So they believed like God would smite them or whatever. The Vikings would come in and they didn't care. They were pagan. They believed in like Thor and Odin and Loki and all that stuff, all the Marvel people. And they just killed the monks and took all the stuff. And the Christians were quite shocked when God didn't like strike them dead. The Christian God didn't strike them dead. Anyways, did that for a while. But they get largely converted in the 1100s, and their raids largely stop at that point. Plus, the Earth starts getting, well, not quite, it doesn't quite start getting cool yet, but it largely stops. But again, what is our significance here? Why do we care about this? Otherwise, we wouldn't learn about this.
Trade that causes spread of the Islamic flag.
Okay, what they do is they establish a solid trade network in the north. They help establish it anyway. All right, so they're the ones that kind of connect all of these areas. They connect the powerful city-state, trade city-state. You tell me actually, what's the city-state right here? You gotta know for the quiz. Novgorod, yes. Right, they connect the Slavic peoples with the Byzantine Empire. They trade with, I believe Vikings trade as far as Baghdad, or at least into Iraq. So they connect the Mediterranean with with Northern Europe essentially, right? And that's going to facilitate when the plague comes in and arrives in the harbors of the Byzantines and the Italians. It's going to just continue to spread throughout all of Europe, and the Vikings played a big role in establishing that. All right, but the biggest civilization that played a role in establishing trade networks that facilitated the spread of goods, including disease, that was a long sentence. Who were they in 1206 roughly when they started?
Mongols.
Who though, specifically? I'll go with you. Who united all the Mongol tribes? Yeah, Genghis Khan. Okay, cool. So with the Mongols, 1206 to 1368, something like that, or 86, mid to late 14th century. All right, so Genghis Khan. He is going to unite the pastoral nomadic tribes of Mongolia. Friendly? Diplomatically? No, by force, right. By the way, how does he keep you in line? Like, he's going to conquer you whether you're an enemy Mongol tribe or later a Turkic tribe, and he's going to pretty much ensure that you're not going anywhere. How does he do that?
He puts you in a regiment of strangers, and
Yep.
if you try to escape, the whole regiment dies.
Exactly, so those people are not going to let you leave because they'd all be dead if that happened. Okay, cool. So, Genghis Khan is going to unite the Mongol tribes. Again, they're pastoralists. What's a pastoralist? No, that's a nomad. Pastoralists are specific in that they do, or their society functions a specific way. How do they survive? Yes, they move, but what are they moving with? What are they moving towards?
Herds.
Herds, yes. They are going to be the ones that follow the herds through the grasslands and river areas. That makes it particularly hard, by the way, for civilizations to go after them. Like if the Chinese are particularly perturbed at them, it's like, well, you can't just go to like their capital city because they don't have a capital city. They're just out there somewhere. If they don't attack the Chinese, though, they know exactly where the Chinese are because they have cities. All right, unites the Mongols and has a very efficient military. What was the major military advantage of the Mongols, by the way, that nobody could really beat for quite a while?
Horseback archers.
Yeah, horseback archers. Like a whole society based on them. Is that mine or yours? Okay. A whole society based on cavalry archers. And nobody really knew how to beat that at the time. The only thing they could possibly do was, have a walled city or a castle and be like, well, you can't get us here. That's true. But the Mongols could defeat them still. So, cavalry archers. All right, and they invade into China. What dynasty are they invading into in the 1200s? Song dynasty, right. And while Genghis Khan's not going to actually conquer the entire Song, he's going to take the northern half of it and start the what dynasty there? Yuan, yeah. Or at least that will be started there later. And again, that is the dynasty in China run by the Mongols. All right, so his son Ogday takes over later. They conquer quite a bit into Central Asia. Who's his son that takes? Oh, I just said Ogday. Who was the Khan though that's going to consolidate China and rule it? I guess to say most flawlessly. No, not flawlessly. He screwed up a bunch. He threw away a bunch of troops over here to the Mahajabit and Japan.
The grandson of Kublai Khan.
Yeah, Kublai Khan. Yep, that's the grandson. Correct. Excellent. Okay, so there's the Mongols. They get into China. How do they, before they get siege weapons, how do they get these Chinese cities to surrender?
They starve them.
Yeah, they starve. They can't really say they siege them initially because they didn't have siege weapons, but they certainly would just surround them and starve them. Any supporting army or supplies coming, they would just crush it. And they had a couple tactics they would use. So first of all, they had the cavalry archers that were really hard to beat, but also they do this like hit and run thing where they'd attack you, and the battle looks like it's even, then all of a sudden they start retreating. You're like, oh, we won, and then they all chase after you, but it's not real. They just want to draw you away from your main force, and then they turn on you and kill you. And they kept doing this over and over and over to new civilizations because they'd never seen it before, or at least they didn't know that's what they were going to do. All right, so they get into China, they defeat the northern parts here slowly. What do they take from the Chinese that really helps them out elsewhere in the world? Yeah, they take the Chinese siege workers and weapons, and they're going to utilize those in Persia, near India, in Europe, in the Middle East, all these locations they're going to be using them. Okay, so yeah, just generally tell me, if I'm conquered by the Mongols, what do they do? Let's assume that I resisted them, right? I didn't just volunteer to join them.
They put you as human shields, soldiers, just like.
Oh yeah, they're brutal like that. If they're attacking, they're going to use your civilians to see human shields and throw plague bodies into your city, all that kind of stuff. Okay, but what do they like do once they've taken over you?
Plunder.
Yeah, they plunder. Okay, cool. So they collect tribute, right? They take whatever they want, really. What other things do they take?
Slaves.
Yeah, slaves. That's a big one. Slave laborers, right? And do they take any military personnel or equipment?
Some.
Yeah, any technology. So give me an example of one. We already covered it, but I just want you to say it again.
Siege worker.
From?
Chinese.
Yeah, they do it for Persia too. So Chinese/Persian siege workers. Cool. They also kind of back end an old or a declining Turkic empire as they go through Central Asia. What empire was that?
So,
Yeah, following just the Seljuks from a few 150 years earlier or so. And they're going to incorporate them too. So very quickly, they have a massive multi-thousand person force of Mongols, Turks, and they also have some Chinese and later Persian workers going along with them. So let's get a conquest chain here. So they take Central Asia largely from the Turks. Okay, they got that. They got this region here. Where else do they go?
Persia.
Yep, they get into Persia, who resists them, unfortunately for Persia, because now they have siege weapons. So they pull the Chinese siege workers over there, and they help to break down the Persian siege, or forts rather. Get Persia, boom. All right, what else?
Abbasid Caliphate.
Yep, they did the same to the Abbasid Caliphate, exactly, to resist them, and they're going to sack and destroy Baghdad in 1258, so down goes that.
To the Indus River.
Yeah, they go all the way to the Indus River roughly, so into Pakistan. All right, they stop there for the most part.
The Kievan.
Yeah, they get out in Eastern Europe, all the Russians and Kievans and all that. So they get into the Middle East, right? There they're going to actually be defeated by a combination of the Mamluks and the Byzantines, but they're not really going to put much effort into that. Normally if they lose a battle, they just come back with more and beat you anyway. But they don't come back after this one because they're so far extended. But we do get one branch that goes off and just annihilates Europe. They defeat the Russians, the Georgians, the Azerbaijani. I don't even know what to call that group. The people of Azerbaijan, Armenians, Russians, the people of Kievan Rus, the Polish Lithuanians. They even get into Hungary and knock out the Hungarians. They don't really control it, but they defeat their armies there. and then they book it back because they're quite far away. But of course, when they get back to Mongolia, they're like, hey, by the way, it's super weak over there. We should take it. And they actually do. So very quickly, the Mongols are going to conquer, like they have the biggest land empire for a very, very, very long time. They're going to have China. They're going to have Korea. They're going to have pretty much all of Central Asia. I don't think they get into Tibet. Don't quote me on that. I just don't know. Middle East, Persia, Central, the Caucasus region with like Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Eastern Europe. Like they have a huge, 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 huge empire. So I realize they lose a battle here, and they lose a couple other battles. But what really stops them from expanding?
The Indonesia, Japan.
You're right. That's a total failure, a complete failure by the part of Kublai Khan. You're referring to when they attempt to invade Japan twice by sea, but they have no idea what the hell they're doing. And they also try to, because they don't pay tribute, and the Mahajapahit Empire of the Indonesian archipelago refused to pay tribute, so they try to invade them, lose their whole army again. But what happens in this empire that's going to really prevent them from spreading?
Internal conflict.
Yeah, internal conflict. Because once Genghis Khan and Ogden, they go, it's going to be, I mean, there's so many sons and grandsons, and they all want to be the great Khan. So they're all going to fight over one another. So initially, they break this massive empire up into 4 parts. What are those 4 parts? Okay, they're called Khanates. I should write that up there. Ruled by a Khan, but again, everybody wants to be the great Khan. Nobody just wants to be a Khan. They want to be a great Khan. So let me put who they conquered real quick. So China, I'll put the Song actually dynasty. Song, even the Northern Jin dynasty, but we'll just, who cares about that? Song dynasty. We'll put Central Asia, Persia, Abbasid Caliphate, Eastern Europe, mostly just the Russians. All right, huge military, or sorry, huge empire very quickly. And they break it up into 4 Khanates, right? And that's their unique government. So the Arabs had caliphates and sultanates. The Mongols have Khanates. Ruled by a Khan. Yeah. And this is much more like the Aztec Empire in that they largely let you continue ruling. You just have to provide a steady supply of tribute / slaves / workers and allow the use of your military. Otherwise, they come back and stomp you again. All right. What are my 4 Khanates? Well, I got this one, and these 2. It's that one. Great. That one. Chagatai, yeah. That one. Yeah. That one.
Golden
Horde, nice. And those are going to maintain themselves for a while. And even though the Mongols were like killed like the most people since all the way up to basically World War I and later Hitler and Stalin, what good things did they do?
Spread knowledge.
Spread what?
Spread technology.
Okay, but how? Let's get to the how first. You're right. Eventually, technology and ideas are going to spread, but how? What's allowing that to happen?
They reinvigorated trade.
Yeah, they reinvigorate trade, especially which trade route?
The
Silk Road, right. So the Silk Road is going to be reestablished, or the system of roads that is the Silk Road. All right, that's to be established. Indian Ocean Trade Network is going to pick up just because there's going to be more activity in general. Same with the Mediterranean. I'm not quite sure about the Trans-Saharan, but that trade's going to be reinvigorated. So China is now going to have a direct link with the West, which they haven't had for a while. They've been connected with the Indian Ocean through the Song dynasty, but now it's just straight China to the Mediterranean and Europe. So what are some technologies that are going to trickle from China to Europe, for example?
paper money.
Yeah, I should probably put that Silk Road reinvigorated. Yep, and then we get tech spreading from China. So yes, what did you say? What was your example?
Paper money.
Paper money from the Tang dynasty and Song. What else? What?
Printing technique.
Yeah, printing. Nice. Printing technology. That's going to get to Europe eventually through the caliphates, into Spain, and they're going to develop the printing press, which is going to change the entire world. Gunpowder, yes. Not weaponized yet, but when the Europeans get it, they're going to figure it out. There's a couple navigational things.
Compass.
Yeah, compass and astrolabe. Those are both going to greatly help out. Actually, the astrolabe, I think, was a Muslim invention, but the compass for sure comes from China. So I'll put compass for now. All right. So those technologies are going to get to Europe, who at the time is not really learning anything. because they've forgotten how to learn. What was that old Greek idea where they're supposed to doubt things and try to find them out? Science, logic, yeah. So Greco-Roman logic has disappeared. And why aren't people allowed to go to try to find answers on their own? What's constricting them? I think I told you this. Maybe I didn't. Yeah, the Catholic Church has got a tight grip on that. All right, but the arrival of these new things is going to start the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation, and certain areas of Europe are going to be much more relaxed, and they're going to allow them basically to think about and read about and invent things, and that's going to really, really transform Europe. All right, that's the Mongols. Last one, the bad thing that they're going to spread that just kills millions of people. Yeah, what disease specifically?
Black Plague.
The Black Death, right. That originated in China. It's going to make its way across into the Mediterranean, then back around through Europe, those trade routes established by the Vikings, and it's going to just decimate people. So we have the Black Death in the 14th century. All right, so a third of Europe dies. And depending on the area, you get 30 to 90% of people are dying. Are the fatalities higher in, I just make it sound like a video game, fatality. Are the fatalities higher in cities or rural?
Cities.
Right, because they're close together, share sanitation, all that crap. So it's going to do particularly bad in port cities, right? And that is going to be spread by the fleas on rats. And the Europeans are going to make the mistake of thinking the cats are doing it, and then they kill the cats, which are killing the rats. That means there's more rats and more fleas, so they make it worse. Good job, guys. All right. So other than everybody dying, not everybody, but a lot of people dying, what are my cultural and economic impacts here? How does this affect literature and art and things like that?
There's an apocalyptic tone.
Yeah, that's from the notes. What does that mean? Apocalyptic tone.
Art basically starts to focus on death and despair.
Yeah, literature and art are going to focus a lot more on death, despair, short lives, etc. Okay, cool. So, all right, we'll put that apocalyptic tone. As long as you know what that means. All right, so art, literature, death-centered, or short life-centered, or misery, despair-centered. Okay, cool. What about economically?
There's a labor shortage
Yeah, why is there labor shortage?
because the workers die.
Okay, but I mean, half the people would want stuff though. Why do they want more things than they wanted before?
Because they would need more people to make things.
Why do they need to make more things? So you remember this problem? Okay, so there's only one way to increase living standards in a short term, meaning everybody has more stuff. That's kill half the people, right? So that's what happens here. A third to half the people die. That stuff doesn't disappear. That stuff goes to the leftover people, so their living standards go up. So doing a little better, right? So actually we'll put that living standards up, other than the worrying about death part. They have more stuff because half the people die, and so then they get their stuff. So that creates a new problem.
They have money to spend.
Yeah, now they got more money to spend on stuff, so they need more things to make. But the only problem is half the people are dead, so there's no one to make it, right? So we have a labor shortage, which is good for workers or bad?
Good.
Good, yeah, because they can negotiate for higher wages. Like, oh, you need me to work for you? Well, I don't want to work. Oh, you really need me to work? Well, you got to pay me a lot. So that's how it's going to go. All right, and then also women get a chance to work if they want to. All right, cool. That's the impact of the Black Death and the Mongols and the Vikings. So again, these two, even though this precedes 1200, obviously, these two are going to establish and consolidate the trade networks that are later going to spread this disastrous Black Death. All right, which we can now treat with a pill, antibiotics. Ta-da! But back then, you Dunsky. Got it? All right, let me get a quick swig of water here. All right. Let's do African and Southeast Asian states. We'll do Africans first. So who do I have referring to, not really an empire, but at least a developing civilization, right? Yeah. Okay, you're right, Ghana and Mali, but besides Ghana and Mali. Yeah, Hausa kingdoms, Hausa land, yeah. There we go. Actually, I should probably write this up here for the internet people, which might be you actually, pretty soon. Hope you wrote all that. I mean, you don't have to, but. Okay, so African kingdoms. So we have from like 1000-ish BCE, sorry, CE to, when did they get kicked out? They got booted out by a sultanate in the 1800s, I think. Yeah. So we'll say the 19th century. That doesn't look very nice. We'll put 1800s. There we go. Their peak's going to be like the 15th to 18th century, but regardless, these are the Hausa kingdoms. And they're going to really benefit from a particular trade network and connection with a particular civilization. What are those two answers that I'm asking questions to? Let's go with somebody else. You guys have answered plenty. Let's go with a silent person who's afraid of being wrong. You're not a silent person who's afraid of being wrong, but you haven't answered very many, so okay.
Sub-Saharan.
Yeah, okay, so the Trans-Saharan Trade Network, right? Which at the time was just going this way, but oh, now it can go this way. So why can it go this way now?
Because of caravan.
Yes, so the Arabs are going to domesticate camels, which can travel across the desert much more easily, and travel in caravans, which are groups that make it easier to carry supplies and survive this trek across the desert. Cool. So Arabs are going to connect, and that is thanks to, of course, camels and caravans. Excellent. And how are these? How is that going to benefit the West African kingdoms, including the Hausa? Yeah, cricket sound. I can't make one, or I would.
You get the idea from the higher ups to like get a centralized government.
Okay, they do borrow a lot of ideas from the Arabs, so they are going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Not borrow, but knowledge, but borrow. They're going to borrow the Arab, or at least the general Arab administration program. All right, so they're going to start what looks more like a centralized government or empire. And who the Arabs learn that from, by the way?
Persians.
Persians, right. Well, everybody knows that one. All right, but what's going to really benefit these guys over here? Like, that they're going to, their kingdoms are going to grow and become more economically powerful. Why? What? Trade with who? Okay, which state or states? In 1,000. In the year 1000. Who's up here?
Abbasid.
There you go. Abbasid Caliphate or other associated sultanates. All right, so they're going to connect with caliphates. And do the caliphates have some money? Do they have some trade goods?
Yeah.
Why? Remind me. Yeah, they're at least connected to all the major interregional trade networks at that time. Exactly. Okay, cool. So that's big money for them. And what's their primary trade city? Not Timbuktu, don't say it, but Kano, yeah. Kano, and then they're going to convert to what and why? Islam, because? Yeah, they want that good relationship and trade benefits with the Arab caliphates. Trade benefits. So they got things like gold and ivory. And actually, ivory is more of an East African thing. Gold and copper, salt, and one other thing that's not something you can mine that they're going to have a lot of in West Africa. Nope.
Slaves.
Slave. This is where the slave trades begin. The slave trade starts way before the Portuguese, in as early as 1000 CE with the Arabs. Because remember, these African kingdoms would fight, and they would just take slaves. And the Arabs got there and they're like, hey, we'll take some of those. And so they would just essentially buy them. So that West African slave trade was an ongoing thing since as early back, at least on a large scale, as 1000 CE. All right, cool. So, yeah, that's good for the Hausa kingdoms. What's down here? The one civilization.
Great Zimbabwe.
Great Zimbabwe. Cool. All right, and that's going to be from like 1100-ish to about 1450. There's not a whole lot that's super relevant about this. They were one of the only walled civilizations down there in the sort of Bantu-ish regions. But what is significant is they're at the very tail end of a major trade network. So I want to know what that is and how we know it.
Indian Ocean, and they know that they're connected to the Indian Ocean trade because they found artifacts from China.
Yeah, they found a couple Chinese goods there. Yeah, so they're going to be tail end of Indian Ocean trade network, right? And they do find a couple Chinese goods there, cool. And they are a walled city. There are several of those small walled cities there, but they exist. So what's going to cause their decline then, if they're doing so well for 350 years?
They ran out of gold in their mine.
Okay, they believe that perhaps the access to gold had declined. Okay, so gold mines decline.
Lack of trade down there.
Yeah, and there's going to be way more trade up north, especially when these get established. We'll get to those when we get to the city-states. Actually, no, let's just do it now. Who's here that's going to develop a much more complex and active trade network up there on the the Swahili city-states? Okay, so let's put end fall due to gold mine exhaustion and trade up north. They basically it's like building that In-N-Out they're building on the road by the freeway. It's like instead of building by the freeway, you build it by itself by the river. It's like, it's not going to get nearly as much business. All right, so, yeah, this one, Swahili city-states, already said it, I don't need to ask that. I'd be impressed if you remember this, because I just told you this today. City-states. All right. This is a mix of two different ethnic groups / languages. What is that going to be? It's all the same people, but that's fine.
Arabs and Bantu.
Yeah, Arabs and Bantu, right. The Bantu are basically all over here. And the Arabs, of course, are going to come down there. So it's going to be Arab plus Bantu. Oh, I forgot to mention this today during the lecture. What's that wind sequence that's going to bring ships to and from that region easily? Monsoon winds, yeah. So that's going to help them out. And why does this area become Islamic for the most part over here on this coast?
To take advantage of the trade benefits.
Okay, they wanted trade networks benefits with the Muslims, but which Muslims are there? How are they there? What is that?
Muslim diaspora community.
Yes, it was the Muslim merchant diaspora. So you had Arab merchants settling on these trade cities, building mosques, and of course encouraged people around them who really wanted to trade with them in these Swahili city-states to convert to Islam. Were these city-states like an empire? No, they're a bunch of independent city-states for the most part. So they are part of the Muslim diaspora, which again just means, especially for the internet, it just means you're from one location where there's a lot of you and you disperse and settle in small groups outside of it. Diaspora. Nice. And then, yeah, city-states, not an empire. All right. Who are we forgetting out? Oh, that's right. Very close to this, though, in what is considered Ethiopia now, also known, at least part of it, is Eritrea, and then also called Abyssinia. What dynasty is going to establish itself here in 1290 or whatever? So we have the Zagwe Empire, but this one's the one that lasts for 700 years. Solomonic dynasty, yeah. Solomonic dynasty. In what is now Ethiopia. That's going to go from about 1290 to 1974. It's got a long stretch there. Islamic?
No.
No, what are they?
Christian.
Christian, yeah. It's a Christian kingdom, a lone Christian kingdom. And they're going to actually hold out for quite a while. They're surrounded by hostile sultanates and Muslim states, but they're going to hold out for a while. And they actually get some help later in the 1500s when somebody shows up and provides them with guns and troops to help fight off neighboring sultanates.
Portuguese.
Yeah, the Portuguese, right. So in 1500, they received support from the Portuguese. The Europeans were happy to find them because they had this legend of this lost Christian kingdom, across the sea or whatever. So when they found this, they're like, there it is. But they really just ended up helping it out as far as staying independent. And they actually stay independent all the way through the age of imperialism, which we'll get to later. So yay, Solomonic. By the way, it was called that because the leader thought he had ancestry going all the way back to King Solomon of Israel. So it was a pretty long one. Okay, got that? Sweet, so that's here, here, here. What else did we have? Southeast Asia, right? Yeah, okay. Southeast Asia. What are my two Southeast Asian Indian archipelago empires? They'll go first and then second.
Srivijaya
Yeah, Srivijaya.
and Mahabharata.
Yeah, yeah, I'm spelling that wrong, I'm sure, but that's cool. Okay, so Srivijaya is going to be 8th century-ish, which is 700s to about, what was the year? 1060 or something like that. Let me double check. Maybe it was 1200 actually. I wrote the year down because I knew I'd forget, and I did. 1290. 1290. So about 700 to 1290. All right, and they're going to be mostly a what type of religiously? What type of a state?
Buddhist.
Buddhist initially, because that's going to spread from via trade in the Indian Ocean. Okay, and what's their major trade city going to be? That's organized on a choke point, so everyone's got to go buy it and trade and buy it from there.
Malacca.
Yeah, Malacca. That's going to be a powerful city-state. And again, why? Oh no, we'll get to that later. We'll come back to that. All right, that's their main trade city-state. And they're going to spread a bunch of their people throughout the Indian Ocean over here. They're going to have their own like mini diaspora of merchants. What type of people are they? I just told you this one today. They're not Muslim. They're not Chinese. Singapore is over here. Okay, I'll give you a hint. This is Malaysia. The Malay people, yeah, there you go. Unfortunately for them, though, from the island of Java, they're going to be essentially pushed out, right? They're a maritime empire based by sea and trade. So are these guys, though. And these guys are going to run, they're going to push them out from 1290 to 1500. They are also going to be initially Buddhist. But both of these regions are going to peacefully convert to what?
Hinduism.
Nope, not Hinduism.
Islam.
Islam, why?
Through
Yeah, but who? How?
Muslim diaspora.
Yeah, that Muslim merchant diaspora, same thing. So this whole region is going to convert to Islam by peacefully, essentially. And this is, by the way, the last major empire in that region, as far as indigenous empires go. The Europeans are going to show up in the 1500s, and they're going to start taking over things, the Portuguese and the Dutch and the British. But that's the last like major empire of the Indian archipelago. In fact, they're actually famous for defeating one very, very tough to beat empire. Yeah, the Mongols, the Yuan dynasty. Cool. That's those two. Got two more in the region, though, on the mainland, the peninsula in Southeast Asia.
The Khmer and the Champa.
Yep. So which one is modern-day Thailand and Cambodia, and which one is like southern central Vietnam?
Mine is central.
Is what?
Is modern day Vietnam. Sorry.
Nope.
Champa is south Vietnam.
Yep. So we got the Champa Empire in what is now central and southern Vietnam. And we have in modern-day Cambodia and Thailand,
The Khmer.
Khmer Empire. Oops, misspelled that one. All right, Khmer are like 800-ish to 1300-ish. Champa is going to be significantly longer. I can't remember their start. I think they were like a really early start. It might be like the 200s or something like that. I wrote it down because I knew I wouldn't remember if I could find it. And I cannot find it. Yeah, so it is the 2nd century, so it's actually the 100s. All right, so we'll say 100, and they go for quite a while. They go to 1832 or something. That's a pretty long-standing empire. All right, what two religions dominate this region?
Hinduism.
Hinduism and,
Buddhism.
all right, which one is going to be adopted more so by the upper class and which so much more by the lower classes, and why?
Hinduism was that upper class.
Yep.
Because
Because,
it enforced the hierarchy.
right, the caste system enforced the hierarchy. Excellent. And Buddhism?
And Buddhism was because it kind of accepted everyone, like.
Yeah, it was open to all. It was egalitarian. Cool. That's Buddhism. And it's going to be the same story here in the Khmer Empire for the most part. So what I want to know then is, what are the 3 reasons that these rulers are going to adopt Hinduism in that area?
It enforced hierarchy.
It enforced the hierarchy, of course. It said I should be in my position because I'm such a good person, or I was in my last life. Okay.
And they also like the culture, how it's like.
Yeah, there wasn't really much of a unified culture over there. Those were new empires and civilizations, but India had been around for like 3,000 years or so, so they were willing to adopt a prestigious and ancient civilization's customs.
I like the deities.
Yeah, like the deities. Which ones?
Shiva and Vishnu.
Yep, cool. So, caste system enforced the hierarchy. They admired Indian culture, and also they admired the deities, such as the Shiva and Vishnu. Cool. What was the Khmer Empire? particularly famous for. Both of them had cool architecture, but Hindu architecture and Buddhist statues. But like, what was the main thing, the huge thing that was the biggest at its time? Angkor Wat, yeah. At its time, the biggest city from 1100 to about 1300. Then it was abandoned. We don't know why. All right. Cool, those are those empires. And is that all the states? Now it's just the Inca, Aztec, and the trade city-states, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's bust them out and get on out of here. All right, we'll do the Aztec, and then we'll do the Inca. We can do both of them pretty quick, and then the city-states, and out we go. All right. Aztec and Mesoamerica, where my Inca at?
South America,
Yeah, where?
the western half.
What region is this?
Andes Mountains.
Andes Mountains, yeah. Nice. All right, where did the Inca originate from? What, like, main city?
Cusco.
Cusco, yeah. All right. Where did the Aztec hail from?
Southern
Yeah, they invaded into Mesoamerica. So we got the Aztec, we got the Inca, and both these guys are going to operate roughly from 1300-ish to about 1500-ish when they get wiped out by the Spanish. All right, Inca actually even a little less than that, I think. I think they actually started in the 1400s, but don't quote me. Okay, Aztec, give me some defining features like who ruled them and how? Was this one centralized government, or what was it?
3 city-states?
Yeah, it was 3 city-states. But in the end, it really just became Tenochtitlan. All right. And they conquered people, and they spread trade and stuff, which is cool, but they were particularly brutal when they conquered you. They were very militaristic. Give me some qualities that were not so nice.
Human sacrifice.
Yeah, they had a lot of human sacrifice, like thousands and thousands and thousands. They believed they had to not end the world for the most part. All right, so human sacrifice is a big part of it. People didn't like that when you took their kids and family members for sacrifice. What else did they take or collect?
Slaves and tribute.
Slaves and tribute. All right. And they are responsible for the spread of culture and trade and things like, ball sports and all that. But no one's going to miss them when they're gone in the region. So somebody shows up and brings smallpox inadvertently and wipes them out. Who is that, and why are people so willing to join them to overthrow the Aztec, which they do?
The Spanish, and
Yep.
people are so willing to join them because they want to overthrow the Aztecs.
Yep. So it's the Spanish plus I guess say American Indian allies. And they are willing to do that because they really, really detest the Aztec because of how brutal they were. All right. So I wanted to say something else about it, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, who was the last main ruler of the Aztec Empire in Tenochtitlan? Moctezuma II, yeah. Excellent. All right, down to the Inca. This is a first wave empire. Like, they're not centralized. They leave your local rulers in place, right? They just force you to pay tribute, or they come back and whack you again. This is a second wave empire, though. What are they more like? Yep, they're centralized, meaning?
They said governors, cities, roads.
Yeah, governors, cities, roads, etc. They're much more interconnected and organized, absolutely. Centralized. They got roads, local officials. In fact, they're so organized, they have their own state-run economy called what? The Mitas system. What is the Mitas system?
It's like socialist, and the government controls the jobs and what they do.
Yep, they store the stuff, pay you, tell you what to make, etc. And they use it effectively, at least as far as we know, in that area. And this is a state-run economy. If you want to do anything on your own, you have to do it on your own at home. And they're able to build some pretty crazy things pretty quickly. What was that sun god temple?
Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu, right. So they built a giant temple to the sun god at the very high up in the Andes Mountains. Sun god temple. But they lack some things which makes it all the more impressive. What do they lack that would normally enable people to work and organize themselves well?
Wheels and domesticated animals.
Wills and domesticated animals, right? But what about the communication? Because they kept records somehow. What did they lack, and what did they have instead?
They lack the language, they use Nazi.
Yeah, so they lacked knots, but they had these things called quipos, which are like knots to keep track, to keep records. All right, but no wheel language, or written language, I should say, and no domesticated animals other than llamas, but they can't really haul anything. Okay, and last part about the Incans, what two things caused their fall?
Spanish disease.
Yeah, Spain/disease and
Internal conflict.
yeah, Civil War. That'll do you in pretty quick. So they hold out to like, I think the last stronghold fell in like 1572 or something. All right, cool. That's the major civilizations. Now let's just do the trade cities of Gdańsk. All right. So I'll have you identify them now. So for the Empire of Mali, I've got Timbuktu. For the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, I have Baghdad. Yeah. For the Italian city-state that is a maritime force, I have Venice. Nice. For the Northern European Baltic coast city that is enriched by Viking trade, I have Novgorod. For the West Indian city-state that is going to be enriched by the Delhi Sultanate, I have Calicut. Oh yeah, Calicut. We'll just say Calicut though. We're going to talk about Malacca. That's a check. Yeah, nice. We already discussed them. In the south of China, connected with the Great Canal, or the Grand Canal, with the north and central of China, I have the major trade city called, this will be impressive, remember this one. Hangzhou, yeah, nice. It's not an easy one to remember. What am I skipping? I know I'm skipping a couple. Oh, yeah, the Central Asian one. In former Persia, conquered by the Greeks, and then the Persians, and the Mongols, and the Persians again, I have, nope, Samarkand. Nice. And in Central Asia, conquered by the Chinese, Turks, Mongols, Chinese, Caliphates, yeah, Kashgar. All right, cool. So we'll talk about these ones. You just know about. I just described basically what they were. These ones just already discussed. These two we've got to cover. Oh, that one I discussed largely. Timbuktu. Which empire is that connected to? Mali. What's going to enrich them? Trade with who? Yeah, the Caliphates. What religion are they going to be? Yeah, Islamic. Don't pack up yet. Islamic. All right. Timbuktu. Oh, real quick before I forget. All of these city-states at roughly the same time, so not the Aztec and Inca, let me get that out of the way so it's not confusing. At roughly the same time, at around 1000 CE, they're going to pop up and become incredibly wealthy and powerful. Why then? What's going on?
The Vikings reinvigorated the trade routes and stuff.
Okay, that's one trade route, yeah. So this whole Mediterranean and Northern European trade network is going to be reinvigorated by the Vikings. Cool. Why else?
The Mongols.
The Mongols are going to start up what?
Silk Road.
Silk Road starts back up again. So Mongols. What else? Indian Ocean Trade Network, what's going to be contributing to that?
The Swahili and
Okay, Swahili and the monsoon winds. Delhi Sultanate. Yeah, the Indian archipelago ones, Srivijaya, man, I can't even say it myself. And the Mahajapit. Okay, and then who's here that's connected to all of them? Yeah, the Caliphates, Abbasid this time. So because there's these large empires that have wealth that are trading, they're going to be going through these city-states and benefiting from that wealth. Excellent. So which one of these is known for establishing trade contacts as well as forming a powerful navy and being the middlemen, this is going to give it away, between Europe and the Caliphates and the Byzantines? Venice, yes. They're also going to invent banking. So banks, to store your money. They're going to form contracts as middlemen. And remember, what's a middleman?
transportation.
Yeah, you pay them for the transportation. That's the UPS guy that delivers your Amazon package. He's the middleman. All right, and you pay him for it. All right. Oh, and a large navy. They're going to control the Mediterranean Sea. All right, which one of these is a result of its location on the Silk Road, and it was also one of the oldest civilizations ever. The Persians controlled it, the ancient Greeks controlled it, and it's now a big center for Islam.
Samarkand?
Yeah. What kind of people are here? They're Sogdian. Yeah, Sogdian merchants, and they are pretty damn ancient. It's one of the oldest cities, and they, of course, are enriched by this Silk Road. Who else is enriched by the Silk Road? Kashgar. And while they are going to be conquered by many, many peoples, they do have that central position on those major trade routes. So when trade is doing well, like it's doing in the roughly 11th century to, I don't know, 14th century, they're going to do really well. I feel like I'm forgetting one. I don't think I am. Bye. All right, so let's start with the Aztec. They're coming in from where? Yeah, it was now like the South United States to the Central American, Mesoamerican region. They run in the, I can't remember the exact years, but it's basically the 15th century to the 16th century, like 1520-ish, when the Spanish finished their conquest. All right. So, the Aztec, is it one centralized government?
No.
What is it?
3 city-states.
Yeah, it's confederation of 3 city-states, right? The head one ends up being Tenochtitlan. All right, so we'll keep it at that for now, but it is 3 city-states. And it is not a second-wave empire. They're not centralized. When they take people over, like other Mayans or other people in the Mesoamerican region, what do? Yeah, they force tribute. Take slaves and, yeah, a lot of human sacrifice, right. So they are not friendly when they take over you, all right. So slaves, they force you to pay tribute, and of course they have their whole fun human sacrifice thing going on, which causes people that are taken over to not like them very much. In fact, a lot. Okay, and who do they leave in charge? Do they put Aztec people in charge, these other city-states they take over? These Mayan places? No. Yeah, they leave them in charge. So they got to pay tributes, and if they don't, they come wreck up their city again. But yeah, they're required to provide soldiers or tribute payments or whatever whenever they're asked, or they'll get smashed again. All right, cool. So the Aztec are not making any friends over there. All right. Culturally, they do, just like the Mongols, even though they're terrible, terrible, terrible people, as far as how they treat people they conquer, they are going to spread trade and cultural ideas and things like that. So you do see an increase in trade in the region with the Mayans and the other Aztec and other tribes in the region. But again, overall, it's pretty bad for most people, which is why when the Spanish show up, people have no problem rising up against them. So who's the last great Aztec king before that kingdom falls?
Montezuma II.
Yeah, Montezuma II. All right, and again, they do have several 100,000 people in their empire. They do enhance trade and all those good things, and they facilitate the spread of culture in the Mesoamerican region. But again, not well liked. Spanish show up. What immediately wipes out a whole bunch of them unintentionally? Yeah, smallpox, right, cool. So European diseases are going to just absolutely annihilate all of the peoples of the Americas, all the American Indians. European disease is going to decimate them, so measles, smallpox. Things that still kill people in the old world, but at a much, much, much reduced rate. It's more often that people survive these. No immunities over here, though. They've never seen these diseases, so they just get wrecked population-wise. Like upwards of 90% that come into contact with it. Okay, that weakens them. But also, the Spanish, even though they're a very small amount of them, they're able to raise up an resistance force against the Aztec. Quickly tell me why they're able to do that.
Because everybody hated them, and so they were like...
Yeah, everyone hated being ruled by them in the first place, so drawing up allies against them was not hard to do. Right, so as a result, the Aztec are going to fall to the Spanish and their Native American allies, or American Indian allies. Cool, that's the Aztec. They're one of only 2 major state systems in the Americas pre-Columbus. What was the other one?
Inca.
Yeah, the Inca. Where are they at? Yeah, the Andes Mountain region. Coming out of what main city-state? Cusco. That's right, Emperor Duru. Inca. They're about the same time span. like early 15th to, actually a little later. They hold out to like 1572 or something. I think they're 1428 to 1572. Regardless, if you just want to throw on 15th, 16th centuries, that's good enough. All right, so they're also going to expand via conquest, but their state system and administration was a bit more impressive. They were much more similar to the old classical empires of the old world. How so were they similar?
Second wave centralized.
Yeah, meaning what?
They had a local administrators all
Mhm.
over their empire.
Excellent. So you've got a central authority in Cusco, but they have like local administrators, and they're going to have road networks, just like the Romans did, and the Persians did, what the Chinese did. They're also going to have a written language, right?
No.
Nope, they actually don't, which just makes this all the more impressive. So, centralized government and officials, they of course have roads, but they got no written language. But they still keep records. So they got roads, mail, no, sorry, not mail, my bad. But they have records. And how are they keeping these records of death certificates and what people own and what wages there and all that stuff?
Kipo?
Yeah, the Quipo knot system. That was one major handicap that the Inca were able to overcome. No written language, but they still kept records with those knots. What was the other major handicap that they had?
No, we.
Yeah, no wheels or domesticated animals to pull stuff with. Llamas are not very good for hauling. So, did I turn this on? Okay, good. Llamas are not very good for hauling. So it's all human labor, no wheel, no written language, and the Inca still are going to expand a massive empire and build a lot of monumental structures. So, let's write that. Oh wait, no, we're not writing anything. What I wanted to ask was, how do they organize the labor then to build all these things so quickly?
The Venus system.
Yeah, which is what? Somebody else tell me.
They pick their jobs for the people,
Who's they?
the government.
Yes, the state is going to dictate your job and your wage. We don't know how much people liked or disliked it because they have no written records. But anytime in human society you force people to do something, it tends not to be liked. What was the only way people could actually do stuff they wanted to do?
They had to make it at home.
Yeah, they'd privately make it at home. Nonetheless, it's going to work, so it's called the Mita system. Is that coerced labor? What the hell is coerced labor?
Force.
Yeah, it's basically forced, right? So like, I mean, it's like when you pin your little brother and you've got their arm behind their back and you're telling them to say uncle or whatever, like that's coercion, right? You're essentially forcing them. So that's coerced labor, but it's going to work. It's going to get the job done technically. So that's a state-run economy. They dictate your job, your hours, your wages, all of those things. Okay, cool. What's an example of something cool they built though?
Machu Picchu.
Yeah, the temple of the sun god, or the sun king, right. Okay, cool. So they built a large temple of the sun god, aka Machu Picchu. All right, cool. And they're going to stretch from parts of modern-day Chile all the way up to like Ecuador region. So that is the biggest, largest, and most organized network and empire in the Americas pre-Columbus. So impressive, well done. What leaves them vulnerable, though, to conquest by the Spanish later? I think it was Pizarro that did it.
Civil War and internal conflicts.
That's the same thing, but yes. So Civil War and
European disease.
yeah, diseases again, right? Because it's a very low amount of Spanish, but they're able to pit other Incans against another, or Incans against one another because there's a civil war going on, and the Spanish disease, again, unintentional, but beneficial for the Spanish. So their fall is going to be Spanish conquest, and that's going to be due to disease and civil war. Lucky timing by the conquistadors. We'll talk about them in period 2. All right, any questions about the Inca? Onward. So we'll talk now about some trade city-states. So I'll put a bunch of dots up. You can tell me what they are. Wait for me to put them up first. This is a bad one. Yeah. Is that all of them?
The Viking.
Oh, they're not a city though, but yes. We already talked about them on the last one anyway, so. I think that's enough. That's good enough anyway. Oh, yeah, thanks. I did this one, but yeah, there's actually multiple here. All right, cool. That was what I was forgetting. Sweet. Timbuktu. Venice. Novgorod. Great Zimbabwe. We already covered that one, but just to have it up there. And then these ones here. What's Swahili?
Bantu and Arabs.
What?
Bantu and Arabs.
Bantu and Arabs, yeah. Okay.
Baghdad.
Baghdad.
Calicut.
Calicut. All right.
Malacca.
Malacca. Hangzhou. Ooh, here's where it's more tough.
Samarkand.
Yeah. And
Kashgar.
cool. All right. So the question I want to ask is: these cities all become incredibly wealthy and powerful. I mean, this is an imperial capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, but the rest, just make sure, are not capitals. They're mostly semi-independent cities. All right, this one's definitely part of the Song dynasty, but for the most part, these are, and this is definitely part of the Srivijaya and Mahajapahit, but they're pretty much going to be independent, powerful city-states. So what I want to know is why from roughly 1,000 to 1,300-ish CE, I've got such powerful trade cities. Why so strong? We'll talk about each one momentarily, but why in general are these going to pop up and be so wealthy and powerful for a few centuries?
Because the trade system coming up.
Why are the trade systems coming back up again? What does that mean?
They're reinstated.
Reinvigorated. Okay, so they're increasing in their volume of trade. All right. So I want to know a why.
Warm period and Mongols.
Okay, that's two specific reasons. Sweet. So I do have a warming period. That is true. Petering out in this time. So I do have a population increase. But Mongol Empire is a specific answer to a much more broad development. So yes, the Mongol Empire, it's massive. I mean, look, it's got most of the cities right there within it, at least at one point. What else, though, is popping up besides the Mongol Empire, or is already there?
Vikings.
Okay, yeah, I got Vikings enhancing trade up here in Europe and Mediterranean. Absolutely. That's going to help spark Venice and Novgorod. Absolutely. What else?
Abbasid Caliphates.
Yeah, the Caliphates. Absolutely. They're going to spur trade pretty much everywhere for the most part, right?
Mahabhajit.
Yeah, Mahabhajit Empire. Absolutely. A little maritime trade there. And before them, the Srivijaya, all right? Those are new ones that I have trouble with pronouncing, but nonetheless. So what, is that all my empires? We can do more than that.
Delhi Sultanate.
Yeah, okay, Delhi Sultanate. So Delhi, Mongol, Caliphates, Vikings. Remember that Vikings aren't an empire though, they're just a bunch of independent merchants and invaders. We got Mahajapahit.
The Mali.
Mali, okay, cool.
Song dynasty.
Yeah, Song. That's good enough. All right, so I've got a lot of major empires that are stabilized, which we've just discussed earlier. Why does that enhance trade? Just because I have large, stable empires?
Safe.
Safe for who?
The
Merchants.
Merchants. Give me a specific answer if you can.
It became safer for merchants because they had armies protecting them.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I have large, stable empires, increased trade. And then the why is, if I have a large empire that's got me protected, I'm not worried about being invaded or invading as much as I would normally be. So I have more time, peacetime first of all, and then time to myself to worry about providing for my family. So that's when I would go into my craft more. I'd be able to make more things. So is everybody else. We're able to trade more, and the routes are safe, so it's easier to sell them and trade them. So everything is a bit safer, more stable. So I have more trade. All right, and anytime we have a bunch of stable empires, we have an increase in trade. Right, that's the same with the old classical era before that. When Rome was running and the Han Dynasty, we had the Silk Road going, right? Because there was two stable empires keeping both ends somewhat safe. All right. So same thing here. So large stable empires increase trade, and then of course people are able to produce and trade more because it's stable and they're safer. Got law and order, not being invaded as much, etc. All right, what trade network specifically though? Like what's this one? Yeah, cool. So examples of these trade routes. Silk Road. This one. Indian Ocean Trade Network. This one. Trans-Saharan Trade Network. This one. Yeah. Cool, that's a good amount right there. All right, let's get a couple specifics then. So let's do Timbuktu. What's this one gonna be known for?
Gold.
Salt.
Nice, gold, ivory, salt, and the beginnings of slave trade, yeah. So the first West African slaves, of course, during wartime between these kingdoms, they would take prisoners, they would sell those prisoners voluntarily. Not the prisoners were not voluntarily being sold, but the kingdoms were voluntarily selling them to the Arabs. Right, that's going to start as early as like 1000 CE. All right, and then the Portuguese, of course, when they come down a few hundred years later, they're going to be like, well, that's a great market. They're going to buy some, and they're going to send them on over to Brazil and the Caribbean, and I think less than 10% of slaves actually go up into North America. Most of them end up in Brazil and the Caribbean, but nonetheless, Portuguese get there and continue that tradition. Okay, so gold, ivory, salt slaves. We also have Islam here. Why though?
Treatment.
Trade benefits and their government.
What? Who? Trade benefits in their government?
Arab.
Okay, what about Arabs?
The Arabs would trade benefits.
Okay, cool. So the Arabs have initiated this trade, right? So let's not forget, why are they able to actually go across the Sahara Desert now?
Caravans.
Caravans and camels, yep. I maybe said this last week or whatever, it's a double review for you. Okay, and then Islam is to spread, and again, the reason why is because they're going to adopt a lot of the Arab governmental policies, their administrative policies, and their religion, right? So if they're Islamic, are the Arabs more or less likely to trade with them? More likely, right? So the merchants and elites are going to convert there. We've covered that before, but I will put that up here. So merchants, elites, convert for trade perks. And of course, they learn Arab administration, but the Arabs learn from the Persians, so they learn from the Persians. Okay. That was Timbuktu. Check. We did Great Zimbabwe last week, I think. Swahili city-states, cool. So the Bantu people migrated over here a long time ago, and then we have Arab merchants coming down here as well. Swahili city-states. What I want to know about these guys is because it's pretty much the same goods. It's, I believe it's gold, ivory, copper. I can't remember if they had salt or not, but it's pretty much the same stuff. So Swahili city-states. But what's keeping ships coming consistently to and from this coast from the area of Persia and India?
Monsoon winds.
Yeah, monsoon winds, nice. Why are these guys going to be Islamic pretty soon? Right.
Muslim diaspora.
Yes, the merchant diaspora of the Muslims, right. So we've got a lot of Arab Muslim merchants settling over here, building mosques. Locals convert, of course, for that exclusive trade those exclusive trade rights and benefits. All right, cool. Muslim diaspora. Excellent. Check. All right. Calicut, that's just going to be enhanced by a lot of the Delhi Sultanate stabilization in the Hindu kingdoms over there. Baghdad, obviously, is going to be enhanced because they're the capital of which giant empire that's connected all trade routes? Abbasid, yep. Novgorod, what's going to improve trade in Novgorod?
Vikings.
Vikings? How are they getting there?
Longboats.
Yeah, longboats go down the rivers. They go down the Volga River. They trade with the Byzantines and others. They also sail all the way around into the Mediterranean. And Novgorod is going to become a very powerful trade city. Well, until the Russians just run them over later on. But that's not until the 1500s, so we ain't there yet. But yeah, Novgorod got a lot of Viking trade and activity, and that's going to be a nice trade center for the Baltic / northern / Eastern Europe portion. All right, cool. Viking trades and accelerate that. How about some info about Venice?
Naval.
Well, I was about to say it. They were a middleman and they had a lot of naval power.
Middleman for what? For who?
For the Muslims and the European.
Okay, cool. So you got European medieval kingdoms, right? You've got the Byzantines and you've got Arabs and Turks. All right. So you're saying they're going to be the middleman. What the hell's a middleman? Stands in the middle? I'm staying with you on this one.
Okay. So they buy products from the Europeans and they sell them to.
Yeah, they're the ones that ship or package the stuff. Basically, they'll purchase it or pay for it to be shipped, just like UPS or Amazon driver would. It is a little different though, because you're right. They do purchase the goods and then sell them for more later, but they're still that connection. So they established a lot of contracts with the Byzantines, with some select Muslim pockets, and of course in Europe. And they're going to become quite wealthy by facilitating all the trade in the Mediterranean between the east and the west portions of the Mediterranean. So they get a lot of money, and they're very smart with it. They do two major things with their money that make their power even more, I guess you would say, dynamic or greater in that era.
Established first bank houses?
Yes, so they established the first bank houses. I didn't write Venice up here, so here's Venice. Nice, so they're the basically the inventors of banks, private banks. So I can now store my money somewhere safe, deposit later, instead of carrying it around or hiding it in a hole and hoping nobody finds it. That's going to be a lot safer than having like an imperial treasury or something like that. So first banking houses. And we'll talk more about, actually a little bit later, about how banks make money. Because when you borrow money from a bank, you're not just paying them back, you pay them back plus interest. So banking very quickly becomes a very profitable business. What were you going to say?
I was about to do they invested in their naval power.
Yeah. In fact, they're going to be so powerful that they're, as a city-state, able to rival the entire later Ottoman Empire and their navy, well, with some help, of course, from Spain. But they're going to take on the Ottoman navy and defeat them at Lepanto, I think it's called, around Greece. And that's largely contributed to by the Venetians and their army, or in their navy. So they do know where the power is at. You have a lot of Italian sailors and naval ships and merchant ships, and they're going to control the Mediterranean for a long time. In fact, when they start exploring, they hire Italian and Venetian, Italian is Venetian, they hire a lot of Italian sailors because these guys are the best sailors around. So, I mean, if you guys didn't know, Columbus wasn't even Spanish. He was just hired by the Spanish. That's Venice. All right, check, already did the check. What two city-states are going to be, well, first of all, run over by a whole bunch of empires, from the Persians to the Turks, the Mongols, the Chinese, basically everybody, and greatly enriched by Silk Road trade.
Smart money, cash money.
Yep, that's right where they're on. So Silk Road is going to enrich these city-states, but again, they're going to switch hands a lot because they are very unfortunately placed on or near the steppes of Asia, which are just like super easy invasion territories, a bunch of flat grasslands. So again, the Persians, and the Greeks, and then the Persians again, and then the Turks, and the Mongols, the Chinese. So everyone's going to roll through there at one point and take all these. Ooh, what are these people called, by the way? The people over here? Sogdians, right. They're the merchants over there that are going to be quite wealthy for quite a long time. Okay, cool. Malacca.
Maritime.
Okay. What two major maritime empires is that going to be a part of?
Srivijaya and Mahaja.
Yeah, cool. So it's going to be a central trade city for the Srivijaya and the Majapahit empires. All right, cool. Just a quick reminder as to what those guys are. So they're first, they're second. This is, I think I have the years wrong, but it's with the 900s to the 1200s for the Srivijaya, and then the 1200s to the 1500s for the Mahapajit. All right. What religion is going to be there originally?
Buddhism.
Yeah, Buddhism and a little bit of Hinduism is going to get into those states, right? Obviously coming in from India, which is what your short answer was about. So that's going to trickle in through merchants. Again, that's Buddhism and Hinduism. But what's going to largely replace it in that area, thanks to another diaspora community? Islam, right. So these are going to shift from Buddhist with some Hindu to Islam. Same reason though. You're going to have a bunch of Muslim merchants coming in, settling, and they're going to convert a large portion of that region. All right. There are conflicts though, even still, between Buddhists and Muslims in that region. Really, really violent ones too, by the way. Which is odd because you would think that Buddhists wouldn't be. But I mean, they got to defend themselves, I guess. But they're not always the defenders in those regions. But anyways, so that is Malacca. Oh wait, why is that one so powerful though? Besides the fact that it's a part of these maritime empires.
It's at the choke.
Yeah, it's at the choke point for the straits that are going through from the Indian Ocean to the very, very lucrative land of China. Yes, exactly. So you got to go by there, whether they're charging you a toll tax later or just they're a pit stop. That's going to greatly enhance their wealth. Renzo, you got to be awake, man. Or I'm going to kick you out. Yeah, you can't just sleep here for free for extra credit. All right, so the other 30 of you are doing very well. So, Malacca covered. And what's my last one here? Hansu. Why is this one going to be, why this city in China? Why not what is later Beijing or Macau or whatever?
Because it's connected to the American.
Yeah, why does that help it out? You're like, I don't know, I just know it's connected.
It connects North and South China.
Yeah, so that helps why?
So trade ideas and things can spread.
Yeah, so they can send goods to this city to be traded or back up. Harder to do, but that's going to allow a much easier set of transportation options. So you're going to have increased economic activity, communication, and transportation here, and that's going to center around Hansu, which is also the one of the main pit stops for traders coming from Southeast Asia or the Indian Ocean. All right, sweet. So we've got that's all the trade city-states. We go to those. Sweet. Let's do the social stuff, which is not that long. Well, the economic stuff's a little bit, but whatever. All right, economic innovations. So these are all going to be innovations that are going to make trade much easier and safer. All right, so economic innovations. So what you're going to know for the AP test is, of course, what they are, how they helped, and where they originated for the most part. All right, so first one is, I don't know if it's the first one, it's the first one I'm going to talk about. This is going to make trade much more. Okay, tell me a problem you might find here. If all of my wealth is in silver and gold coins, why might that be a problem for me if I'm moving around?
Transportation.
It's really hard because they're going to be bulky and heavy. It's easy to see if I have them, right? I can't really hide them very well. Like, oh, is this giant sack of gold that weighs 80 pounds? Like, yeah, you're screwed. So one thing that's going to really, really increase economic activity, as far as make it easier to trade or hide, if you need to, is going to be printed money, yeah. And who invents that? Yeah, the Tang Dynasty, right. Or at least they popularized it, the Song does too. And that's official. It's officially printed by the Tang and Song governments. It's allegedly backed up by silver and gold they have. Yeah, that's going to be a practice that begins as early as the Tang Dynasty. People are still going to be resistant to it, even in the United States in the 18th century, and even the 19th century, actually. Printed money, of course, that's going to make it much easier to trade and transport your stuff. Also, I have a much safer place to keep it. Venice started this one.
Banks.
Banks, yeah. And again, banks are very profitable, guys. They don't just loan you money or hold your money for free. They make money off of your money. So even if I just put money in there, they're investing that money in other things, in other companies, real estate, or whatever. I'm not exactly sure when specific industries began, but banks were very profitable, like right from the beginning. So what we had here in Italy was a lot of these city-states developed banking systems. They had large, powerful banking families, like I'm sure you've all heard of the Medicis before. Maybe you haven't, I don't know, but now you did. The Medicis, or the Junker class, later in Germany, they're going to be a very, very wealthy banking family. And again, they make money because if they're holding on to your money, it's not just sitting there. They're loaning it out to people and collecting interest. So like, for example, if I borrow $1,000 and I pay it back over 3 years, do you think I pay back $1,000? No, I probably pay back like $2,300. So like their interest rates are, depending on the loan, doubling the amount they're loaning out, right? Like in general, if you go to buy a house for like 4 or 5% interest, you're pretty much paying twice the house over 30 years for the most part. You can pretty much assume. So you're like, oh, I want to buy a $300K house. You're going to pay like $550, $600K if you get like a 4 or 4.5% mortgage rate on that sucker over 30 years. So banks make a lot of money off of handing out money. And they invest it too, but I'm not going to get into that. So banks, it does help though, because that enables me, if I have no money, to do what? Take the loan, yeah. I have to pay back more over time, but I can still get the thing I want now. All right, that's really going to pick up economic activity. Because now, instead of, well, I got to wait 6 years to save up for this tiny boat, it's like, nope, now I get the boat now, and I pay it off over time, right? So that's going to rapidly increase the amount of stuff people can buy very, very quickly. All right, and again, it keeps your currency more safe because you now can put it into a bank, which is much harder to rob than somebody's house or a lone person walking around. All right, so banks, Italy. Examples of the Medici's, cool. If I want to transfer money from my bank to somebody, do I have to just have that physical money on hand or no? No, what can I use?
Checks.
Yeah, checks, that's gonna be what, the caliphates are gonna start, those are called like socks or however you pronounce it in Arabic. So you have checks, which of course, they're official documents which transfer money from your bank account to, or your account, whatever it is, to somebody else or whatever business or whatever. All right, let's make it much easier. Instead of having to go to the bank, get it yourself, bring it, just write them a check, they're gonna be able to deposit that on their own. So checks, of course, the caliphates. We also have, I don't know why I put minted coins on there, those are old. The Persians invented those a long time ago, so we'll just take that off. We've had those for a long time. What's the other one? Credit and debit, is that the other one?
Yeah.
All right, cool. That one is very similar to a bill of exchange. In fact, I'll do these together. Credit / debit / bill of exchange. These are based on trust. So you would only do this one with somebody you actually trust, somebody you've got some sort of trading relationship with, like you know that they're an experienced or reliable trader, you've worked with them before, etc. Because a bill of exchange is like an IOU saying, all right, I'm going to take this and I'm going to pay you on this day, right? So it's later. It's like, I don't have the money now, but I'm going to come back in a month or whatever time you signed, and then I'm going to pay you. So obviously you have to trust the person, because what could they do? Just not come back, right? Not pay you, right? So you only do that with a company or a person that you know, they're established, they're going to be there, they're reliable, right? But it still works because it can be much better. You can enhance the amount of economic activity because people can buy stuff now instead of when they have the money down the road. All right, credit debit's the same thing. It's like a tab. You've all heard like put it on my tab before?
Yeah.
That's just what that means. So credit and debit is, let's say I am a merchant, and let's say Aaron here wants to buy a bunch of paper, all right? So he doesn't have the money on him, right? But I've done business with him before. He's got an account, right? And so I can just keep track of what he owes me, right? So he's like, oh, I need this paper. I'll keep it on my account. I go, yeah, boom, $100. Here's your $100 of paper. Goes and does his thing. What's he eventually going to have to do, though? Yeah, he's eventually going to have to pay it, exactly. So that's where the credit debit comes in. So I keep track of that. If he's got $100 into the debit portion, I might have this backwards, but in the debit portion, then he would have to add credit by paying it off later. So this would be $100, and oh, he can pay that off later, $100, and that cancels them out, so he has no balance anymore. All right, so that's all that is, just tracking your debt essentially. Put it on my account, you got to pay the account later. So I already explained it to you, but how does that actually help trade?
Easier transportation. Oh.
Credit and debit?
You can buy stuff now and pay it later, so like you don't have to buy it down the road.
Yeah, it's faster. It's just like the banks. You can buy it on that moment instead of down the road. All right, because if you had to save up for everything, nobody would buy a house till they're like 40. All right, people buy them when they can barely afford them in like their 20s and 30s, and then they finish paying them off when they're old, basically, like 50s, 60s maybe. Depends on what you got, your loan and what loan you got, but that's when you finish. So if people had to save up for it, they wouldn't get a house till they were like really, really old. In fact, some people can't save money because they suck, and they would just never get a house because they would just buy a bunch of little things forever, and then they would just die without a house or whatever. All right, so, but if you've got a bill coming every month for a fixed amount, then people are better at just paying that. Regardless, that helps you to buy big things now, which is going to increase economic productivity. And we've got 20 minutes left. Y'all keep looking back there. All right, like you got anything better to do? Let's get rolling here. So economic innovations, those are covered. We have a new type of organization too, 2 new types of organizations. I know you got these in the notes, but I wasn't here to explain them. Or my voice wasn't able to explain them because I was sick. They're kind of difficult, all right? So the first one is a guild. A guild is a difficult one to understand. So, all right, we're zooming in on Europe specifically here, because they don't, so far as I know, really exist outside of Europe. So a guild, I don't want to say they're like a gang, but they have similar qualities. So what a guild is it's in like a town. We'll just take our town here, Lathrop. All right, pretend we're in Europe, and this is Lathrop. If I wanted to do something, I would basically need permission from these people to do it. And I mean economically, not just like, I want to go to a park. I gotta ask somebody, that's not what I mean. What I mean is like, if I want to become a baker, I can't just become a baker. I have to get permission from the baking guild, all right? And that's a group of families or other bakers, so we're just using baking for now. And I need their permission to even become an apprentice, let alone a journeyman or master baker later on. So these guys control industries. What do I mean by industry?
Like clothing industry.
Yeah, basically different professions. So it could be clothing, textiles, it could be baking, it could be iron working, whatever. Right, so they control a certain industry. So in this case, we're using baking. I don't know why I picked that one, it just popped in my head. So in the baking industry, it's going to be controlled by a guild or a group of people in a city. All right, so this is the baking guild. So they determine several things. Number one, who gets hired? So I could be filtered out immediately if they don't like me. All right. Does it sound a little exclusive if somebody can tell you if you can or can't do a certain job? Yes. It is a little bit, right? So what you're going to have is a lot of corruption because people could just pay to get into certain industries or get certain privileges or jobs or whatever, but we're not going to get into that. All right, they determine who gets hired. They determine how much you get paid. They determine what you make. They also determine the quality of what you make. So I'll say technique and quality. So let's say I become a baker. They're like, yeah, you can become a baker because you're the son of this guy who I like, so you can be a baker. So you become a baker. Does that mean I can just roll in and start making bread however I want? No, they're going to specifically tell me the technique to use as well as what price to set it for. So how much choice do I have in all of this? None. Pretty much none, right? So they're going to determine my pay, they're going to determine what I'm making, how I make it, and they're going to inspect the quality. If I have that part, inspect the quality. So when guilds are popular during the, well, we'll just say Middle Ages of Europe, so between Rome, they don't start right when Rome falls, but between Rome and the Renaissance, how much innovation and creation and productivity do you think we have in Europe?
None.
Why none?
Feudal system.
Yeah, okay, well, the feudal system, yes, and the church, you're correct. Those are not wrong answers, but I'm referring to guilds here. Why might a guild prevent me from, because you're totally right about the church, you know, trying to control knowledge and all that, but like why would a guild stop me in an industry from being creative or productive or anything like that?
Because they tell you what to make something.
Right, yeah. So if I got a cool new idea about how to make something, am I going to be able to carry it out? No, because even if I do it, they're going to push me out of town. Literally, you know, push you out of town. So that's why guilds are going to be good if you're in the guild, but bad overall if you're not in the guild or if you're trying to do something new or different. All right. When those disappear, all of a sudden we have a whole bunch of new creations and innovations that spring up. Okay, cool. So guilds. Guilds become very powerful. So these guilds in towns begin, this kind of looks like a cell, but whatever. So here's the bakers, here's the iron makers, here's the textile workers, that just means clothes, basically cloth goods. What else? Lumberjacks. What other jobs are there? Furniture makers. Cobblers, all right. Cobblers. I got all my guilds in a particular town. Are those guys going to be fairly wealthy and powerful?
Yeah.
Yeah, they dictate the industry. Cool. What could they do to make themselves even more powerful, though?
Raise up prices.
Okay, they can do that, but what if people can't pay for it? Here's what they do. They say, all right, we've got our industries on lock, we've got the prices on lock, all that stuff. What we're going to do, though, is we are going to work not just with each other, but we're going to work with guilds in other towns. I know. So, you've got other towns like Manteca, right? They've got, actually, I should use actual European cities. Let's go with the biggest merchant town at the time, which would be Antwerp. You're like, what? That's in modern day, like the Netherlands/Belgium region. Antwerp was really, really known for their large textile industry. What are textiles again? Yeah, basically like linens. Okay, cool. Textiles and other things. All right, and this is it's another merchant town, Amsterdam. Yeah, make your jokes. All right, so these two cities and the guilds in them are going to work together. All right, normally back then, if I'm going to come from another town, I know this is a weird concept because we live in the United States, you can just drive from town to town and it's like, who cares what city it is? Back then, though, like your city was like your country almost. Like those were the people you knew and grew up with. Everybody else like shouldn't be trusted. So if I roll in from another city, like Munster, yes, that's a real city, they're going to, well, first of all, be very skeptical of me because I'm from Munster. But second of all, any goods I bring in, like if let's say I'm bringing in my baked goods, why would people in Amsterdam not like me bringing baked goods from Munster?
Because not what they do.
Yeah, because who controls the bakers here? Yes, the guild, the baking guild, right? They don't want your money going to them. They want your money to go to them, right? They don't want you buying Munster baked goods. They want you buying baked goods from Amsterdam. So what could they do possibly to make sure you buy their goods and not the Munster goods? What? There you go. It's called a tariff, right? So they're going to charge him extra to sell stuff in Amsterdam. That's called a tariff. That's a tax on imported goods, stuff brought in from other, in this case, cities, but it's meant to be countries. All right. So that's a big deterrent. So do you think many people are going to go out and try to trade other cities if they charge twice as much? No, because people aren't going to buy it. It's like, well, why would I buy $10 bread when I can buy $2 bread, right? They're not going to do it. So these guilds begin working together. They start making corruptish deals, and they get rid of this tariff thing. And they agree to work with the guild and form kind of like a super guild, Munster, and just basically increase the amount of money and power that these guys have by kind of uniting. All right? So now, instead of Munster and Amsterdam being rival guilds, they're friendly, almost like a united guild. All right? So no tariffs. They can just trade in between. So they're going to have more economic activity. And if you get more money, what could you start doing with that money? Spending it, that's true. But what could you buy to potentially protect people that are going between? Yeah, exactly. So they start doing things like funding private armies and navies to protect their trade routes. And of course, now they have power too. So let's say Antwerp's like, we don't want to be a part of your little group. Screw you guys are dumb. What could they do? They could potentially bully them into it, right? So they could either offer their services to other cities cheaply, so they lose all their business, or they could use their navies and armies to pressure them into joining their group. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. So what this is going to form is the world's first trade organization, known as the Hanseatic League, or Hansa. So it's kind of like a bunch of local gangs that start working together like a larger gang, kind of. I'm oversimplifying, and I'm not saying they're all evil, but they're going to work together to control industries and hire themselves private armies and private navies. So they can spread their trade, they can spread the amount of people that are buying their stuff and not buying stuff from competitors. All right? They get so powerful, actually, they begin pressuring kings into allowing their trade cities to trade for free, like no tariff. Like I think they convinced what was it, Henry II or something of England. These trade cities kind of coerced the King of England to accept a tariff-free trade agreement with them, or else they were going to basically blockade them, like not trade with them at all. So he kind of had to. So this Hanseatic League is going to be quite successful, and they're going to control a lot of the trade up here in Northern Europe. All right, they're just going to spread. They're going to start in the German areas, and they're going to spread their influence throughout this this North Sea and this Baltic Sea region. All right, that's kind of an abstract concept, especially to learn at like almost 4 o'clock on a Thursday. But that's pretty much how it works. So you need to know first of all what guilds are, and then how guilds in these towns worked together with other guilds to kind of make a super guild, a big trade organization. And again, a trade organization just means you guys work together and there's no tariffs or barriers between you.
Yeah.
All right. What is it? So it's women and the travelers. So women. So overall themes they want you to know about women is they want you to know areas in which patriarchy. Did I tell you what patriarchy was?
Yeah, we learned about it.
You did, but you're like, I remember that word.
Male-dominated
Yeah,
society.
male-dominated society and families, right. It doesn't necessarily mean tyranny, but it does definitely mean that sometimes. So, areas where this more tyrannical patriarchy took place, and then also areas in this era when it got a little more relaxed. So, let's do the patriarchal areas first. So, increased patriarchy. Well, it's basically going to continue everywhere, but the biggest example we have of this is going to be a new practice in China, voluntary or not, that's going to actually maim females to make them seem as if they are more petite, beautiful, and successful, at least part of a higher class. Foot binding, yeah. So we'll say Neo-Confucianism, because who's at the top of the hierarchy in a Confucian society? Yeah, ancestors and men, right. So male ancestors especially, but yeah, males at the top, women definitely below. And of course, they're going to add that cultural element in the Song Dynasty, which is that foot binding, which we discussed earlier. This is kind of just a refresher on that. So Neo-Confucianism, foot binding, definitely going to be an example of increased patriarchy. So what I don't want you to think is like somehow women across the world at this time are free. No, they're extremely limited in the entire world at this point. In fact, right now, here in the West, the United States, Canada, Australia, Europe, it's like the only time in the world that women have actually have equal access and treatment compared to every other country in the world and every other time in history. So it was just the norm back then, but it was particularly bad at this time period in this era. All right, but there are some areas where it was a little more relaxed, or at least it got a little more relaxed. So areas of relaxed patriarchy. Buddhism and Christianity are going to offer opportunities for women to basically, because both of them are open to anybody, so you can become a Buddhist monk or part of a Christian monastery. So like you guys have heard of nuns before, right?
Yeah.
All right, so nuns are essentially saying, I'm not going to live under any patriarchal society, although they are technically usually headed by a male priest, but they are able to live independent lives, essentially, aside from men, and they can focus just on their Christian faith, just like the Buddhists do as they pursue that ascetic lifestyle. So Buddhism and Christianity offered an option for women to not be as controlled by either becoming monks or living in monasteries as a nun, or a convent actually. They're called convents. Convents as nuns. All right. Another example is, oh, by the way, Buddhism spreads to Japan. What do we call the syncretized version of Shinto Buddhism? Yeah, not Shintoism in Japan. So that's going to expand there. There's another group of people. They're not permanent settlers, and they're generally slightly more egalitarian because women have to set up camp and move and help feed and take care of the animals just like men do. They don't do as much of the fighting, but which group would that be?
Mongols and nomads.
Yeah, so yeah, pastoralists, nice, like the Mongols. And again, still definitely run by men, but when you compare it to other civilizations, women had a slightly larger amount of freedom. In fact, they had that Princess Cthulhu who was able to rule. I don't know if it's a myth or not, but apparently she said she would give all of her horses, which was like 10,000 or something, to any man that could beat her in a wrestling match, and nobody ever beat her. So no, it wasn't just the horses too. She said she would marry any man who could beat her in a wrestling match. And she was a princess with a bunch of horses, so it was like, all right, win a wrestling match, basically win a bunch of horses, which was like their currency, and nobody beat her. She still married somebody, but it wasn't because he beat her in a wrestling match. So, another example is, this one requires a little bit of explanation. It's called gender parallelism. This is in the Americas. All right, so here's what I want to qualify it as. This doesn't mean that women had equal authority. Like, so the heads of the government, the military, religion, knowledge, all still men. But in the Americas, that wasn't seen as the pinnacle of society. It was seen as one role we have to fill to keep humanity going. All right, and the women, in this case, had to fulfill the, of course, child rearing, child educating, home-based life, right? But if you think about it, do we still need that to continue humanity? Yeah. Yes, we do, right? So what they did was, they said, okay, men and women have different roles, but no one is superior to the other because we need both. So that's where the parallelism comes in place. So definitely different, right? So you're not going to see any women religious, political, military leaders here, but they're seen as equally valuable because the jobs they do keep human society and families going. All right, so that's gender parallelism. So, and they even had their own gods in some regions. Like the men were more oriented around the sun god, and the women were more oriented around the moon. But they were both seen as equally contributing members of society with different roles. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
So again, not going to see any female leaders here, but they're not looked down upon for the role that they do have. All right, cool. Last bit is agriculture too. Damn it. Agriculture and travel. I can do both of them pretty quick. Travelers are super easy. I got Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta, he's from Morocco. I've got Marco Polo. He's more than just a pool game. He's a Venetian merchant. And I've got Marjorie Kemp, who is a rich woman from England. So they're going to, I'm not sure if she was rich herself or she married a rich husband. Either way, she was rich. And I do believe her and her husband voluntarily became celibate even while married as part of a religious theme. She was pretty pious, meaning she was very devoted to God. So all three of these people are going to be, so we got Christian, and Muslim. All three of these guys, and the girl, are going to, not have enough money to do this. They're going to travel throughout the world. They're really the first people. I mean, the Vikings did this, but they were going on raids. They weren't just going around to write and see what they saw. These are travelers, right? They're not like, again, I'm going to go trade, or I'm going to go invade you. I'm literally just going to see stuff and write it down. All right, so they're in like the 1300s, maybe the first people that really travel the world and document it for people to read about. All right, so Ibn Battuta goes all over the Islamic world, Dar al-Islam. He's going to go to West Africa, going to go on his Hajj. He's going to see the Saudi Arabia, Middle Eastern area. I believe he even dips into the Indian Ocean and East Africa. So he sees like the whole Islamic world for the most part. All right, and he catalogs it in the book, Marco Polo, because the Mongol Empire is in existence, or at least recently was, traverses the Silk Road, visits China, Hangzhou, comes back and tells his tales in Italy. And Marjorie Kemp goes from England, she stays in Europe, but she goes throughout all of Europe and sees all of the major sites and relics there in Europe. All three of them are going to catalog this, and all three of them, especially the first two, their books are going to be wildly popular. And again, why do you think they're going to be so popular? Yeah, nobody's done this before. Nobody knows what the rest of the world's like. So it's going to be something that captures the imaginations of people. So the two things I want you to know about this are, these guys all are going to be, how can I phrase this? They're going to admire other civilizations. So some of the accomplishments they have. Like Ibn Battuta really appreciated the way that the West African women dressed, because they wore almost nothing compared to what the Arabs did. He was pretty impressed with that one. As well as the Indian civilizations and Arabs. Marco Polo was very impressed with Hangzhou and how organized the city was and how orderly their governments ran. And then of course Marjorie Kemp's impressed with a lot of the relics she got to see. But all three of them are going to comment on how inferior and barbaric other cultures were. So they're what you would call narrow-minded. Like they have this idea of what's right and wrong, and they see other people doing what they see as wrong. They are going to be very critical of them. So they're going to criticize other. It's not prejudice. Prejudice is when you have an irrational hatred of a group. All right? This isn't that. This is them thinking, here's an example. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think Muslims can eat pork. Am I wrong about that?
No, they can.
They can?
They can.
Okay, yeah, okay. So, here's an example. That's a rule practiced by Ibn Battuta, right? He sees that as a dirty, unbarbaric practice, okay? But if he rolls out into Europe, or maybe in West Africa, do they eat bacon and ham there? They do in Europe. So how is he going to see that? Yeah, he's going to see this barbaric and dirty and inferior and condescendingly, essentially. He's going to write about it. So they all do that. I think Marco Polo, I don't remember the details. They were eating something. I don't know what animal or insect it was. And he couldn't get over how gross and barbaric and uncivilized that was. So that's going to be that's going to define their writing. Both admiration of these other cultures, as well as critical and narrow-minded regarding their cultures. All right, cool. Now it's the last section. These ones are super quick. Agricultural innovations. This is almost just review. So I've got champa rice. I've got waru waru. I've got chinampas. I've got terracing. I got the horse collar, but we'll leave that one out. So which one of these bad boys was a new strain of rice that was drought resistant and cultivated in half the time, spread throughout the entire Indian Ocean and raised the population?
Champa.
There you go. Which one was where they went to shallow lakes, added dirt or used dirt that was there to garden on islands that looked like floating gardens? Where was that? Yeah, Mesoamerica. Which one was the one where, I don't think I told you this, but maybe you'll get it. You can't farm on hills because they have a grade, right? Water runs down, etc. So they figured out if you kind of carve steps into them and make kind of like a staircase around the entire hill, oops, that's not very flat, you can actually grow stuff and use these hills. All right? What's that called? Terracing, right? That's going to start, as far as I know, in Asia and spread. And lastly, this is the region in which they experienced flooding. So instead of leaving flat ground that would just run over and ruin their crops, they would dig small trenches and add that dirt to mounds so the water would run between, save them water, and their crops would live on top. That's water. Where though? Oh, I should have said water, was it? That would have been great. Where is it?
South America.
Yep, South America, Incans. Bye.